Thanks to everybody who's here in person and on the live stream. This is Canna Connect. We are here to provide education to help the community grow and help bring this industry to life. I know a lot of you have been waiting for years, some decades, to get off the ground and to get a viable business above ground, and it's really exciting. Canna Connect, we connect Minnesotans over cannabis, and we've brought in some great folks to talk about what it takes to build a facility on a budget and really to make the smart decisions early on so that you're not kicking yourself or that you're not out of luck later on. So today we have folks from California, folks from Michigan, folks from Minnesota, and folks from Missouri. It's a good mix. We're as much about the local market as we are the national market, and when we can bring in folks that have done it before, we think it's the right thing to do, especially at the price that you all paid to be here. So thank you for coming, and I am Stephen Eigenmann. We are putting on events across Minnesota. We have CannaCon after party coming up on August 9th. We also are doing the Brainerd Lakes Canna Club, and that'll be August 28th. So if you're up in the Brainerd area, please make sure to sign up. That's a free event. Both are free options. Also, we have the newsletter, the Cannaverse, and connect with me on LinkedIn or Instagram or YouTube. And shout out to the live stream. Shout out to Open Window Production for putting this on today. And we'll get started. So thanks, everybody.
Cool. I guess that's my segue. Okay.
This is Lucas McCann with CannDelta.
Hey, everyone. Great to meet you here at this event. Sir? Yeah, absolutely. And I think I'll just go to the next slide here. Oh, sorry. Great. I see. We didn't run through the slides beforehand, so it's a live show. So appreciate the opportunity to come here and speak with you folks. And for some of the conversations we'll surely have after this talk. It's going to be very informative. What I'm trying to do here is just give you a sense of what the overall process is going to look like. What are the next 5 things you should be worried about as folks are entering into the space, specifically through the cultivation framework. A lot of what I'll speak to will actually apply if you're doing multiple things, if you're a micro, to a lesser extent if you're a retailer, but still absolutely my experience kind of spans the industry, but really going to be focused on helping to set up a cultivation facility, both on a budget and with unlimited budget, and what that kind of looks like. So my expertise is in science and regulatory, and also in advisory work for small businesses that are looking to get up and running as quickly as possible and minimize what we call the burn in the industry, which is the time it takes when you basically start paying money before you actually make your first dollar back. So that's the burn. We want to keep that short and small. So.
Hey all, so I'm Munir Haq. I work for Curate. I'm the president over at Curate. So just want to we're doing some intros right now before we get into the presentations. Thank you guys all for coming here. Like Canna Connect has been a really big advocate for this market, for the folks. And so what we're doing today here is the folks you're going to meet. These are folks that work in every pretty much legal market in this country, and we have a lot of intel that we want to share and just give to Minnesota. So Minnesota has all the positive energy and the roadmap and to be a successful market. We believe that cannabis as a whole, as far as the country, needs to succeed and do well for this to continue living on, and it needs states like you guys to really contribute to that. So that's what we're going to be offering today, and we're going to be focusing on the cultivation manufacturing side for this specific presentation and today, but we do all verticals. And to give you a little bit of background on who I am and what I do, back in about 2015-16, our company was running around preaching why compliance, cameras, access control, security, data, all that stuff is important in the cannabis industry. We were trying to preach to legacy markets, and unfortunately, we didn't get very far. But at that time, Canada was about to go federally legal, just where I met Lucas. And we received a phone call saying hey, we're about to go federally legal. We could use your expertise. So we took our experience to Canada and opened up the first 5 dispensaries to the 180th. And at that time, states started coming up. So we really took this education approach to start helping each individual state. And so that's what brings us here today. There's a thing that I do want to offer with this group of folks and Canna Connect and you guys, congratulations to all you guys that have a license. My email is over here. I'd like to offer a free service that if you have a floor plan that you need eyes to do a security overlay on, know where the cameras go, where the access control goes, and just need someone to do that for you, we will have that conversation with you complimentary. The second thing we'd like to offer is that if you have a facility you are looking at with an address or have a facility that has an address, send us over that address, because what we'll do is we'll reach out to our telecom division and find out all the connectivity that is offered at that. And then based on what your dream, your goal is, and how much actual like tech you want, we can advise on like what are the proper bandwidths and if there's any construction time. So it's a free service we're offering for you guys, so please take my email, and if you need that, love to help you with that. I'm gonna pass it to Jeff.
Hello everyone, Jeff Kelley here. I'm from the energy efficiency field. So for about 11 years before I got into cannabis, I worked for a large utility program doing energy efficiency consulting with different customers, and mostly for Lockheed Martin Energy back in those days. In 2019, I switched my career over to owning my own company, Kelley Energy Management, and we work with primarily with cannabis cultivators. We've done about 300 energy projects with different cultivators of various sizes, from small 2,000 foot of canopy projects all the way up to 60, 70,000 feet of canopy. So our service is to do it the hard way. So what we do is we'll do an energy model of your facility, and we'll get into more of that when I get into talking about it. But if you've, I've got my cards right outside the door there. If you want to throw a Teams meeting out there or a screen share, we can go through and give you guys a ballpark of how much energy incentive you could get from your local utility. And there are incentives outside of Excel's area. So we've been looking into that. Minnesota Power and many of the co-ops have a program. So we'll be happy to work with you and scope it out, and then you can decide if you think that the system that we employ is for you or not. So I'm thinking that's me, and we'll give it over to Scott.
Hey, thanks, Jeff. What's up, Minnesota? This is awesome. Thank you for having me, Steven. Thank you for the Canna Connect guys. I've been around for about 10 years in the legal industry, legal market, and we help cultivators and processors and manufacturers stay compliant, deal with the metric, do your jobs easier and faster, and the excitement is genuine. Everyone's got that gleam in their eye. It's exciting, and I really like these events because there's going to come a time, and we'll get more into it when we start doing the slides, but you know, you're going to have to create those networks and those pockets of people that you sell to, you buy from, and you've got those good networkings going on. So I really like intimate programs like this. As far as Stash Stock, like I said, we've been around since 2015, and we just streamline a lot of things that you have to do that you might not want to do, but we use RFID. We've got automated hanging scales. We automate your labels. We do it for a lot of companies, and I can name drop and all that, but really it's what fits your needs and how you guys can. It's all about your time. It's if you guys are the growers in the room, you guys are good at growing, probably not a lot of the other stuff. And there's also burnout in this industry. There's also, you know, how you guys actually, you know, get rid of your product, bring your product in, deal with, you know, energy issues, deal with, you know, irrigation going sideways. So there's a lot of that goes on. So we try to take off the compliance and regulatory headache off your plates and help you streamline a lot of stuff. So excited to get into more of the details. And yeah, that's it for me.
Absolutely. Cool. We're going to get started in the first part of the presentation. I'm going to give a pretty overarching view of what this process is going to look like for you folks. Show of hands, anyone here like weed? Most people. Okay, cool. Anyone here planning to cultivate within the next 12 to 18 months? Okay. Anyone who's not doing that, just curious, like, why are you here? Interest sake, like, something else, research, looking to get into the industry. Anyone have an answer about that? You? Getting in. So you didn't apply, you missed the boat, and now just seeing what it's all about. Okay, great. Anyone else? Anyone else from different vertical? Okay, anyone here a micro? Oh, amazing. Okay, great. This will be very applicable to you. I'll definitely speak to sort of the overarching process and how this relates into the bigger part of your vertically integrated business model. Are you a micro that's vertically integrated? Show of hands, yes? Okay, so cultivating and looking to go all the way down to retail. Okay, amazing, great. Definitely lots to talk about. I'll start by giving my background and expertise, and then you folks can sort of self-qualify and decide if you want to have a further conversation afterwards. Yeah, so my name is Lucas McCann. I'm technically a doctor of organic chemistry, went to school for a really long time, worked for the government in controlled substances, found that government wasn't really for me, worked in software for a short time, and then started CannDelta, which is a regulatory and scientific cannabis consulting company. What that means is I basically work with people at the starting phase of their project, even before license application, sometimes at the pitch deck or even inception of starting a business, and take them all the way to launching their business, passing a final inspection, and then work with them beyond to help sort of expand on their sales strategy, their marketing strategy. So basically, a coach that works with you through the entire process and sort of beyond to make sure that you do well, connector in the industry. My background, again, is medicinal organic chemistry, which has been wildly applicable when we're talking about manufacturing, extraction processes, when we're talking about good manufacturing practices, which are extremely important if you're going to be on the manufacturing side, especially as it pertains to the production of food products, infused foods, edibles. For instance, there's foodborne illnesses that are extremely important concerns, so minimizing any kind of risk is super important, and that's why we have something called GMP. Right? Before we had GMP, they had the meatpacking district over in New York where we have offices. They didn't have refrigeration. They just used to slaughter at room temperature, keep meat out in the building. Tons of people started getting sick, and they started to say, hey, you know what? We need to implement some kind of safe standards to make sure that people are protected when they buy our food. And that's where sort of GMP was born from, which is a really interesting story. I've been working in this space for about 7 or 8 years now. So that's basically like a PhD working in chemistry, in cannabis on top of what I know in chemistry. And I've kind of seen it all over the time. I'm really excited about the Minnesota framework. I'm extremely bullish on this market. I think this is a very exciting inflection point that we're all seated in right now. And that's really what it is an inflection point that's going to last for the next 2 to 3 years. And then things are really going to start to shoot up. It's moving at a very healthy pace, despite the first, SEE social equity round that happened in the summer, the rejection, the lawsuits, the injunctions, and now the re-lottery, I guess we could call it, with the retailer lottery that just happened the other day. We're in a really great spot for things. So I've got so much content on the slides. I'm going to try and zoom through these things at like 1,000,000 miles an hour. You're probably going to miss something, or maybe you want to see some other resources we have available. This is a free resource off of our website. This is an ebook on post-licensing. What does that mean? So an ebook, post-licensing is everything you need to worry about once the state has confirmed that you've got your preliminary license. So finding property, zoning confirmation, municipal application, site design, physical security, standard operating procedures, operating plans. All that information will be available there. We've got some handouts as well just outside the door. We have another webinar happening at the end of the month. The details for that webinar are in that one-pager. It would be great if you could take them because they have a date printed on them. I can't take them with me, so take them, sign up for the webinar. We got lots more information. We have a ton of resources on our YouTube page as well, which I'll go into kind of towards the end of the presentation. All right, deep breath here. So just to check in, so what is our goal here today? So my goal here for you is to give you some kind of value, right? There's going to be a lot of information thrown at you, and hopefully you'll learn something about what this process looks like. But I'm not going to go into too much detail about any one specific thing. Really, you always got to leave them wanting more. So if you see something you like, our goal is to have another conversation set up, through either LinkedIn, email, or phone. My business cards are also out there on the table, and if you want to stick around and chat, I'll be here basically all day, all night. So really happy to chat with you while I'm in the city. Here's our team. We have actually this is from last year. We've grown our team quite a bit since. We have business strategists, regulatory experts. We have a lot of PhDs on staff. They're actually really great at homework assignments and problem solving and logical, critical, independent thought, which is awesome for this space. And you might think, oh, but this is weed, man. Well, weed, cannabis, is much more strictly regulated than alcohol or tobacco. So, you might think this is a very fun industry, and it is, but it's also a very difficult industry, and it's extremely scrutinized by regulators, and will continue to be very scrutinized, especially in the earlier years, because this is a proof of concept for neighboring states that haven't yet legalized, or for all those who have continued to, vote no on the ballot every time it comes up, right? Pennsylvania is looking at you folks, right? Texas is looking, everyone's watching, right? Places like Minnesota. Minnesota, I think, has done a lot of things really, really well. And they've based a lot of what we've seen off of New York regulations, which we'll talk a little bit about later. We also have a lot of scientists, and we've got a full marketing arm too that helps with things like setting up websites and creating your sales funnel and helping you to actually move the product that you create, because that's where your money is tied up into. It's in that product. It means nothing if it sits in your vault, if it sits in your storage, or sits on a shelf. It's absolutely worthless to you until it actually transacts into cash. So our closest office to this location is in New York, over on Hudson Street. Having said that, we're here all the time. We're happy to meet with folks here on Zoom, wherever. We don't necessarily have to meet face-to-face every single day if we're working together. We would meet typically once a week, but we do have offices around, and we're going to be at the CannaCon show with the booth there. I'm going to be speaking on the Sunday, giving a talk on location support and what that looks like to find the right spot. Okay, again, we've helped over 400 cannabis businesses across all the verticals to date, and that's a lot of folks with a lot of problems, with a lot of solutions that we've helped come across. So we've seen a lot of things. I wouldn't say we've seen everything, but certainly have seen a lot of different situations here. And I would say most of the folks that we work with are usually smaller businesses. Let's call them mom and pops, a couple of friends who've come together who are looking for investors to really make this happen, and they don't necessarily have a lot of money, right? And we're definitely not the cheapest consulting firm out there. In fact, we're actually really fucking expensive. But everything you spend on us, we're gonna make you 10 times back. And I have the case studies to prove that an investment with us is gonna be money extremely well spent, because you'll get open sooner, you'll be producing higher quality product, you'll have less issues with the regulator, and you'll be spending less money on operationalizing your business. And I have case studies that will actually show that that's the case. So it's a wise investment, it's something to consider. The alternative is learning the hard way, which is totally cool too. Everyone likes to do their own thing. But for those that might be looking for information, and some coaching and some guidance so they can get things done right the first time faster, we're a great choice. Not a fit for everyone, but for those who are looking to skip the line, we're definitely there. Okay, so our clients again span the verticals, so outdoor, indoor, retailers, analytical testers, manufacturing, people who just focus on bottling and CPG, consumer packaged goods. We've done everything across the verticals. So every single license type, transporters, distribution, we've done it all. So it can definitely help, especially for those who are on the micro pathway. In the Minnesota cannabis license application round, we helped over 50 applicants through that process. Everyone who we helped that was a non-lottery application prospect won their license. And that was also the case in our social equity round that ran last summer. Everyone who we wrote applications for got through the scrutinizing process and got into the pre-lottery round. So we're really proud of that number. We've worked very hard in this state by giving out things like ebooks, webinar information, and helping people to become aware about what this process looks like. We'll be very, very honest. So license holders have 18 months to get up and running. This is a very scary number, right? Because this actually takes, on average, most people, at least 2 years to do. Okay, so let's let that sink in for a second. So you've already lost 6 months. So we're kind of behind schedule already being here. So, I mean, I'd be sweating bullets because things like building permits, certificates of occupancy, these things take time and they are outside of your control. The other thing that's outside of your control is the regulator's timeline, the way that they like to do things, respond to emails, come by and schedule inspections. You have a very long queue of folks who are all going to be coming and asking for things all at the same time from the regulator, like an OC and final inspection. So let's be cognizant of what we're working against. Cool. So in terms of what you can do and can't do with your license, so preliminary license, you're really just forming your business. You're looking for investors, you're looking for sites. You cannot make any money or conduct any transactions until you have your full license approved. Everyone understands that, right? You can't say, great, you know, I'm a licensed cultivator or micro, I'm gonna start pheno hunting and cracking seeds in that warehouse. No, you can't do that. I mean, anything that you do in your own home, that's kind of in your own home. But as a business, you know, you can't start any activity that pertains to cannabis until such time that you have your full cannabis license. In terms of the post-licensing timeline, you know, we're mostly at this orange line here where folks are looking to secure locations, get the proper approvals from municipality if they want a retail designation or endorsement, okay? They need to compile their license application documents, start their build-out and security implementation process, get their inspection, launch their business, and then start on marketing and completing their sales and building up their sales funnel. So that's sort of where we're at. We're very, very much at the beginning here where all the fun begins and the process of building out a facility really starts, which is a lot of what I'm going to speak to today. So step one, the most important part of putting an application together is going to be on the location. So there's a lot of decisions we need to make before we even start looking at real estate. One, what city, what township, you know, what county are we going to be in? What are we looking at in terms of like qualifying a specific location? If we're doing a retail, you know, what does that process look like with the municipality? You know, are there caps we need to worry about, setback distances, zoning issues, et cetera, et cetera. Our webinar happening at the end of the month is speaking to this subject alone. I'm not going to spend a ton of time on this, but I'll run through it very, very quickly just to give you a sense of what that looks like. And if you want to sign up for the webinar happening there, we'll kind of dive a little bit more in depth onto it. So before inspections and licensing, your location must be listed on your final application and approved by the local government. So the OCM, the state, does not set specific zoning requirements for your location. That is going to be down to the municipal level. So municipality by municipality will be different in terms of what can be done, what areas are permitted, and if the areas are permitted, if there are any other setback distances you need to be cognizant of, those are very important because you cannot get approved unless you respect all those particulars, right, as part of your final license application being awarded. Okay, so you cannot really move to the next step. One of the biggest mistakes I've ever seen folks make, you know, not clients of ours, but folks who have come to us, is they've moved into a location, they've signed a lease, they didn't put an exit clause into their lease, and they're trying to start to build out in a location that was not approved by that city. It's very messy, and it's very expensive to go down that pathway, and it wastes a lot of time. So, you know, please avoid that one most costly mistake. Setback distances, so again, just some general ideas, you know, 1,000 foot from schools, 500 feet from daycares, so daycares, treatment facilities, other attractions, public parks. You know, these are very, very strict setback distances. 500 feet, you know, you have to be pretty far away from that too. All right, local registration and caps, you gotta be cognizant of that. Local governments may cap the number of retail cannabis registrations to one store for every 12,500 residents. And again, you know, local registration renewals align with state licensing renewals as well. So compliance checks are really going to happen here. So, you know, getting the license does not mean you're sort of in the clear. You need to make sure that you continue to remain compliant as well. Okay, so it's really important when considering what your zoning looks like for your cultivation facility that you still respect what the municipality has. Zoning is still important. We have folks sometimes who say, can I set up a tent in my backyard? And the answer might be yes if you're zoned agriculturally, but if you're zoned residential, that's not going to fly. So typically we see cultivation facilities in agriculturally zoned, commercially zoned, or industrially zoned locations, but still that's got to be filtered through the municipality. We have to talk to people in the zoning department to confirm that those activities are allowed. We're at an interesting time right now where a lot of these zoning bylaws and information from municipalities has not actually incorporated cannabis language into it. So we really have to have those conversations and those discussions with the folks to make sure that we have a clear path forward. And even if there is, you also need to like alert them to the fact of the kind of business you're looking to conduct, because they can make things like getting building permits or certificates of occupancy very, very difficult. So being open and honest early is a strong suggestion about how to get through this pathway. I won't go through too much on setback distances because again, we have a lot to cover, but again, zoning is going to be very, very important for folks. All right, let's talk a little bit about the final application docs and submitting those to OCM. So the final application contains a lot of documentation. We typically would put this together for our clients, and a lot of this documentation is going to change based on how your business changes from the time that you submitted your initial application to the time your final license application goes in. If you're adding in investors, those investors will have to be screened and have their background checks conducted. They'll need to be added to the organizational structure. We need to update the cap tables. Then the operating plans, security plans, SOPs are really important. If you don't know what SOP stands for, well then, this is a great time to open up ChatGPT and try and figure that out. Proof of funding, we'll need to show financial readiness. We'll need to show that the source of funds is legitimate as well. Bags of cash technically or typically don't work in the industry, so you need to have everything sort of tracked and traced from bank accounts. And then ownership and financial disclosures. So these are some of the simple things that will go into your final license application in addition to all the particulars around your site. On the topic of SOPs, you really need to have a strong understanding of what inventory control looks like. Scott from Stash Stock is going to talk a lot about track and trace and what that looks like with metric, which is super important. What diversion prevention is, which is basically preventing any illicit product from coming in your facility or from anything going out the back door into the illicit market. What quality assurance looks like, and of course, accounting and tax compliance. Now you need to show to the OCM that you're ready, and the only way to be able to do that is to write SOPs or have SOPs written that have shown that you've thought about this and you've done this before, which is kind of like the chicken and the egg conversation, right? So you need to be cognizant of the fact that you can't just sort of write what you intend to do and sort of figure it out. There needs to be contingencies. And if these SOPs fail, you need to know what corrective and preventative action looks like on these SOPs to ensure that you've got a very well thought out process that if all things go wrong, you have a way to fix it. You have a way to document it, and you have a way to control it so it doesn't happen again. Designing and operating a facility. So there are lots of components that have to go into designing and operating a facility. This is a pharmaceutical manufacturing facility that was looking to add cannabis as one of the products that they wanted to produce. So this is very complicated because one, they were already GMP compliant. They were making products internationally for cannabis, for pharmaceuticals. They had a sterilization area for making like sterile syringes, and they wanted to add a small section that was going to be for adult use cannabis. So here we had to talk about separation, we had to talk about control, restricted access, we had to talk about people flow, process flow, product flow, places where cannabis would be in transit, where they'd be stored, where they'd be effectively processed. So it's a very, very detailed part of the floor plan. But once we're at the part where we're designing the floor plan and working this out, it actually gets to be very, very exciting. So the application, the crux of the application really has to do with the location we select. The reason being is that so much is sort of built off of that. So like the floor plan, the layout, how you're going to be conducting business, all really starts once we've got that location selected. And we've done everything from new builds to retrofitting a facility to maybe adapting an existing facility that, like for example, was a commercial kitchen or perhaps was a legacy grow at one time, and what that looks like to convert it and bring it up to these new standards. So we've seen a lot of these different kinds of situations here. In order to start the process of putting together a floor plan, there are a few really important decisions that you need to make. Starting with selecting a growing style. So there are many different ways to grow weed. There's indoor, right, which gives you very, very high control. It's very expensive, but it will also give you the most amount of harvest per year and probably higher quality product that could be sold at a premium if we're talking about dried flower. There are hybrid systems, which are greenhouses, hoop houses, mixed lights, which have, again, some natural sunlight being brought into them, may or may not have deprivation curtains, which is a consideration. Gives you a little bit of an extended grow season, but typically has limits on how much cannabis you can grow in terms of your harvest, may or may not, and what that looks like if it receives snow. We just sort of think about that as well, versus something that is purely outdoor, which might be very large area, very, very low cost to start the process of implementing, but again, will minimize how many crops you can have per year, is subject to a lot of risk. Rain, hail, storms, other crop failure issues are certainly an important consideration when looking at an outdoor, but can get you up and running relatively quickly on an outdoor. We just need things like a building for processing, packaging, storing. You still need a building if you're doing outdoor. You can't just be a field. And you also need access control as well. So looking at things that would prevent unauthorized access, like some kind of barrier, like a fence, a wall, and also what a security system would look like, infrared cameras, so on and so forth. So we've kind of gone through the cost, quality, and what that looks like in terms of production. Okay, and then on the infrastructure side, so there's lots to discuss here on the infrastructure side. So if we're going indoor or even outdoor, what does irrigation look like? You know, automated systems to help manage the watering, the fertigation. If you have irrigation systems, you need tanks, and typically you need some kind of drainage as well. So things like floor drains are an important consideration. We can do these things with buckets and hand water. That's challenging. If that's what we have to work with, and that's what we'll certainly do. HVAC is an extremely important consideration. This is one of the most important considerations, not just the airflow around your facility, but how the air quality is being maintained for coming into the facility, and how odor mitigation is happening for any air leaving your facility. These are all extremely important considerations. Complaints will happen if there's odors, right? And there will be odors. So how do we try to minimize that impact on the municipality so that you can have your license renewed and people don't try and shut you down? Also, if there are any questions, like I love answering questions throughout, so if you just want to shoot them out there, ask a question, feel free.
Well, this pertains to the outdoor. So outdoor, there isn't going to be any filtration or anything like that. So what have you seen people do when they want to do an outdoor grow?
So outdoor cultivation usually has some of the best air circulation. So as a result of that, there's not always an accumulation of things like odors because the air is always being filtered. We think about the atmosphere almost being like an ocean washing over that field. We don't typically get a lot of complaints for outdoor, but it can happen. So yeah, great question. You obviously won't have that control. Okay, and then looking at the cultivation side, like what kind of propagation is going to happen there? And also phenohunting. Are you going to be starting from seeds, right? Are you going to be also producing your own seeds? Are you going to be starting from clones? Are you going to be producing your own clones? You're going to have a nursery there on site. Are you going to be running tissue culture? Well, tissue culture is a great way to ensure you have pest-free starting material, but also requires extremely scrupulously cleaned spaces to be able to work in. Okay, so those are some considerations. If you're also going to be running packaging, processing, manufacturing activities, extraction, finished packaged product for even dried flour into Mylar bags or jars, important consideration. Any kind of extraction, ethanol, BHO, CO2, ice water, all considerations. You need spaces for that, and you need to have sort of the right rooms built out that would allow for those activities. Growing media, are we doing living soil? Are we doing no-till soil? Are we doing rock wool? Are we doing coco coir? Are we doing something else? Really, really important to consider what that looks like for your strain needs and to meet any specific sustainability goals and also quality goals and production goals as well. If you're going to be looking to implement technology and automation, that's an important consideration. That can happen at certain areas, like around flowering, or it can happen even just in the nursery with cloning systems. Very expensive, but great ease of use once it's set up and it's operating. Inventory track and trace system, I'll defer to Scott on those. And water sources are very, very important. Is it rainwater? Is it well water? Is it city water? How often is it being tested? Are we implementing an RO system? What does that look like? How is it moving around the facility? All very important questions to know. All right, facility layout and design. So this is a snapshot from it doesn't look like it, but this is 30,000 square feet. This is from a 60,000 square foot, 2-floor purpose-built facility on the West Coast, publicly traded entity that's completely vertically integrated, designed for cannabis production. They had a hydronic air-cool system in here that brought in air from the external environment, dropped it down to reduce its dew point so that it would become dry. They'd reheat it, humidify it to the exact right conditions, and they had basically hockey arena style filtration and air handlers throughout the facility to make sure that air circulation was extremely precise in all corners of all their grow rooms. This build was probably somewhere between $8 to $10 million. Most folks are not going to be starting at this point, right? They could. So we've seen this, but we've also seen the 2,500 to 5,000 square foot facility, a couple of grow rooms with a phased approach, starting off with the 5 key rooms that you need to be able to pass your inspection, right? And pass sort of, what you need, which includes things like a bedroom, a flower room, a secure storage area, a gowning area, and a shipping and receiving area.
8 to 10 minutes seems really cheap.
Yeah, well, I guess it depends on, where you're at in the world and, where costs are in terms of things. I mean, now with tariffs coming in, things are going up a little bit, right? So really important to consider, but. Okay, other important considerations like detection for fire, safety, ventilation, sanitation, access and security, product handling. Munir from Curate is going to be chatting a lot about what it looks like to set these things up for IT and security. Really important to be chatting about that with him, and so on and so forth. And then the other piece is sort of like what the GMP side looks like. I'm just going to really quickly touch on physical security because Munir is speaking about that. We've done designs, Munir's done designs. His company does a lot of the cable pulling and really setting everything up from an infrastructure standpoint. But access control is an extremely important part of your facility because to be able to run your facility in a way that's compliant, not even a way that is quality, but just to be able to pass and get your license, it has to be clean and it has to be secure. Okay, those are the 2 things the state cares about. They don't care if it's fireweed, They don't care if it's 25% THC and above. They don't care what your terps are. They don't care. They want to make sure that you're not going to endanger the public and no one is going to walk up to your facility and steal what's in your storage room. Okay, and we do that through things like access control, intrusion detection, implementing commercial grade, fire grade steel doors at every entrance and exit. Then those have access control on them through card readers, maybe dual factor. We have door contacts on the doors, electric strikes. We have a very well wired system so that everything's communicating. And should there ever be an alarm, an attempt, or a successful access, that there's a way for the head of security to be alerted about that access and that the authorities will be contacted. So we help to put these together for the folks that we work with. We're not pulling the cable, it's guys like Munir who go and do that. Okay, your site has been determined. You've passed your final inspection, or so your site's been determined. You've put together your floor plan. You have a sense of what equipment requirements you need. You've put together all of your operating plans, your key investors, your cap tables. Your operating plans all exist into one packet. Those go to the OCM. They receive your application. They've also got your local zoning approval, and that's kind of the process of what it looks like to sort of go through this next stage and get your final license ready, right, to be issued. Okay, so a lot of work has to be done there, and you've also implemented, metric track and trace. So that's kind of what that process looks like. Question?
Would you recommend waiting to fill out that final application before signing a lease in place if you don't have a facility yet?
No, because you're not going to be able to put together a security design unless you know what your lease looks like, right?
Gotcha.
Right. So it all has to happen at the same time.
Yeah. But having that exit clause is.
Well, the exit clause is important that if you need to sign a lease before you can do a municipal application, that you have a way to back out.
Yep.
Right. Because sometimes you need to sign that lease before you can, if you want to hold a spot to see if you can go to the city and get that done, you need to sometimes submit a lease as part of that application. So, these are all considerations, and it's going to depend on municipality, the license type, and the endorsements you have. Yeah, great question. Just a pause there. Everyone else good? Anything else? Cool. Build out and security. A lot of important considerations here. So we have this sort of story about Ron. Ron's looking to put together his facility. He needs things like air handling, electrical, display cases. He needs insurance, accounting, plumbing, MEP drawings, point of sale, tech, again, secure storage. So it's a lot to sort of put together for Ron, right? Camera layout, all that kind of thing. So there's a lot that goes together to put this sort of into play. And where we kind of come in is when we're past the post-selection process and the build-out phase and security phase, speaking with other vendors is going to be extremely important. So when we're sort of the first touch point for a lot of people going through the process, we're often bringing information about the different kinds of vendors that will do the job. Under no circumstance is anyone required to use any vendor if they don't want to. But we have the experience of using a lot of folks from across the country, from many other builds that we've done that we can certainly speak to. And guys like Scott and Munir, they're not just people that I see at other shows. they're people that I've worked with on many other projects, countless other projects, and they're people that I trust and I consider them my friends, right? So we work together to sort of, help our clients collectively get through this process. But typically I would be their first touch point and I would pull the other people in appropriately. When it comes to things like building, contractors, right, working with GCs, those are typically done best by local groups. I would say largely because the costs get kept down. But when it comes to things who are, folks who are providing services that might be a little bit more technical, it can sometimes be better to not pay someone to learn how to do something in cannabis. Because there are a lot of times people who think they can get it, but you're really just paying them to learn so that they can go and do it to the next client. All right, building permits and certificates of occupancy. So once we've designed your floor plan, we would submit that to an architectural firm to give you your MEP, your mechanical, engineering, and plumbing design. We then go and get the building permits, the build happens, and then once the build is done, you have your inspection, you get your certificate of occupancy. Now your OCM inspection, your city inspection. And then with all that, we can submit that to basically part of your final application, because that's a component there. So considerations are, floor plan layout, walls and partitioning, what the walls are actually made of, what the surfaces are made of is extremely important. There's a lot of cost considerations there for what it looks like to sort of put some of that together. Ceilings and floors as well, inventory and storage. Again, secure storage, do I need a vault? Can I build a secure storage room? What does that mean? What considerations do I need to think of? MEP, just as it stands, and then fixtures, equipment, sales, displays, stainless steel tables, extraction equipment, grow tables, irrigation equipment, snips, drying racks, the list goes on, right? You really need to be thinking about end to end, from day one. I have that pair of scissors I need, to do a task like trimming, all the way down to, that roll of tape to be able to seal a tote that I'm sending out to the next retailer. So a lot to consider. A little bit more on security systems, which I won't go too far into, but just this is highlighting here that like when building out a retail store, for instance, we look at all the different kinds of areas that we'd have. Same thing in a cultivation facility. So you'll have areas that are publicly available to access. We'll have employee-only areas. You'll have things like viewing stations, maybe vibrational sensors, alarm panels, electric strikes, door contacts, and card readers, as well as sirens and other instruments as well. I won't go too far into the security piece, but also looking at things like having situational awareness around your facility are extremely important. Understanding what areas are exposed to the outdoors, what walls or partitions might be shared. When building a cultivation facility, we do see a lot of warehouse sites that look very similar to what I've shown here. This is actually a retail store, but warehouse condominiums, as we sort of refer to them as, with units A, B, C, D across a building are certainly feasible, right? So you don't necessarily have to be a full building, you can be a part of a building, in a building, as long as you have your own HVAC, your own doors, your entryways, you can secure that area. That's certainly potentially a great location for you to open up and operate in. It doesn't have to be a full, 4 sides of a building, completely owned and operated by you. The great thing about doing something like this is it can allow you to do even a better phased approach by maybe even acquiring spaces next to yours as you want to grow and expand. So if anyone's looking to do like a mezzo business, for instance, I would say the sweet spot for where that facility would be most well equipped to maximize its profits would probably be around the 15,000 square feet mark, based on its canopy space. Depending on what they're doing on the processing side, probably about 15,000 square feet. Where they should start is probably 5,000 square feet. And then they should do a phase 2 at 10 and a phase 3 at 15. Total facility. Yeah. Yeah, so with that, you're not just looking at canopy. You kind of need to take whatever you have for canopy, multiply it by 2.5, and that'll give you things like vestibules, drying rooms, secure storage space, shipping and receiving, any other packaging that might happen. Some of the rooms can be multi-use, some of them can't be. We'll skip through the security and retail design, camera placement. Yeah, this is important. So this is a design of what a secure storage typically looks like. When we make recommendations, we're not necessarily saying that you should be pouring concrete. We would actually recommend that you don't do that. Typically, when building a secure storage, we would have reinforced walls with some kind of material. If you're a retail store, perhaps 9/16 plywood. If you are a cultivation facility or manufacturing facility, I would typically recommend some kind of diamond metal mesh integrated between your gyprock, There are some recommendations we would sort of provide on that, like no windows, no vents close to doors. All doors should be commercial grade. Dual factor identification going in and out to prevent any kind of like piggybacking. And yeah, some really important considerations for what these would look like. We also see these in retail stores, which is, I think, extremely helpful. This is a secure storage area. They have a central viewing station inside of their dispensary's storage room. And to help with sales and order picking, they came up with this pass-through system. Now, this pass-through system effectively looks like a bookcase on its back with a wall partition built over top of it. And what this does is prevents anyone from looking through into the secure storage room, so it prevents sight lines. They have no idea what's behind there, how much product they're holding on to, how big the room is, any of those things. They can't lean over and point a weapon through it, if they were being robbed. And again, each one of these boxes corresponds to a point of sale system. So what folks would do is they would keep eyes on the store, watching the central viewing station. Order ticket comes up. They pick the order, put it into an exit bag, and then drop it into one of the cubbies that represents a point of sale. A great way to maintain efficiency and improve security. When looking at the different kinds of doors, like this is a really big consideration when it comes to implementing a really robust security system. Having at minimum a key system, barrel lock door, commercial grade door, and then door contacts that would then connect to a junction box, would then go back to the central station. And usually an electro-piezo alarm, which prevents anything, it's a little alarm that would go off if the door is, for instance, held ajar, to let you know that the door hasn't closed properly, or if there was a forced door. We can go up in complexity by adding electric strikes and ID card readers. Yeah, question?
I was thinking about, for my cultivation facility, using a larger door for the cultivation room in case you need to bring items in and out by using forklift and things of that. Is that a good idea?
So in that case, I would usually recommend doors that are 44 inches or wider. If you need the dual doors, so almost like the French door system, that's another idea that you could implement as well. I don't think the doors necessarily need to be bigger than 44 inches. That's usually the biggest I've seen in a facility. Okay. But they should be commercial grade, locks should be commercial grade, they should be fireproofed.
So it's not a garage door?
You could, and I have some photos of some other roll-up doors that could work for that system. So you could, but typically you're not driving a fork into your, most cultivation facilities don't need forks.
Okay.
Right, hand jacks, pallet jacks are completely fine for what you'll need most of the time.
This is more for like the secured storage facility, the locks?
So in most of the facilities we've worked in that are sophisticated, every single door is like this. Right, once you pass the gowning room, to get from the gowning room into the actual operation space, you're badging in and you're badging out. Right, the dual factor is nice to have on a secured storage room because if someone picks up your card in the parking lot, they can't just make their way all the way to the secured storage without having to put in a PIN code. So that definitely helps out a lot in preventing any kind of unauthorized access there. All right. Here's a sample retail floor plan that sort of lays out generally how these things would work in terms of having the public come in, ID check station, sales floor, point of sale here. Behind the point of sale is where we have our secure storage with the pass-through, and then the secured door would be here, and then employees would be there. Customers would never be kind of in the back towards the left. In terms of total operating costs or setup costs for dispensary, we typically estimate between about 100 to 300,000 is typically what folks need to have on hand. Manufacturing, honestly, this is probably going to be in a couple $100,000 to about $1 million, depending on the equipment you want. And for cultivation, I know some of these costs here aren't in line with what I'm saying, but I would typically say, having access to as close to $1 million as possible for cultivation is typically what you need to get something completely up and running, including all the equipment and the build costs. There are ways to go cheaper. We can talk about that, but for most facilities, that's the way to go. Very quick case study here. This is a client of mine, or ours of CannDelta, which was a propane filling station. This propane filling station was an existing structure, which was retrofitted to become a cannabis cultivation and processing facility. They were doing very minimal on the processing side. What we had implemented here was a truss core panel system in most of the grow rooms. What we're trying to show here is that all the walls are without seams, there's no wood, there's nothing porous. There's no gaps, cracks, everything's continuous. You could basically pressure wash these walls down in between harvest to make sure everything is scrupulously clean in between each run, to make sure you don't have any sort of like lingering pests. There's no dust, everything can be very, very easily sanitized. Now, you can cultivate in rooms without paneling systems. You can use things like gyprock, but then you have to make sure that you've got extremely good airflow, because things like gyprock can be susceptible to black mold. And if you don't have really good airflow and HVAC, you'll have moisture lingering around, right? And these plants are extremely wet. They give off a lot of moisture, so being able to deal with that moisture is extremely important. On the floor side, we typically recommend, we make recommendations all the way down to the make and model of the specific paints to be used. You know, for this high reflectivity paint that it's showing here for GPP compliance, this is part of a video that I just took a snapshot of. High reflectivity, pharma grade or food grade paint is typically the recommendation. You know, with the right HVAC implementation, you certainly can do that. Epoxy floors, typically something with a nice 4-inch vinyl run-up to make sure we've got really good coverage. One of my pictures showed up there. Door sweeps over the doors. We don't want too much airflow going back and forth. We usually want things like positive pressure in your grow rooms. That keeps the dirt out and keeps everything kind of pushing towards the corridor systems. And also sort of a negative air pressure kind of in your shipping and receiving, because that's very dirty space. We want air kind of being drawn into shipping and receiving to avoid those things being sucked in to your grow rooms. And then GMP, this kind of speaks to what it will look like when you're setting up manufacturing and processing activities. GMP is a standard that you should be looking at achieving. It's one that is certainly important. You can actually get certified in cannabis, at least in the US anyway. But you know, there are auditors who can come by and run through your facility to make sure things like record keeping, labeling is correct, that you've got uniform airflow throughout your facility, you have the right people, training, processes, and your building is conducive to that. It starts from the design of the facility, the thought of GMP. You know, when we're designing a facility, we want it to look a lot like the digestive system. Things kind of start at the head and they work their way down through the body of the building. That increases efficiency and minimizes any kind of risk of contamination. You know, prevents you having to go sort of back and forth on the different sides of the building, and helps really establish like an excellent process flow while mitigating things like risk and cross-contamination. All right, inspection and launch. So now that your building's all compliant, you know, we're looking at things like security compliance, operational readiness, and regulatory compliance. Preparing for the inspection involves making sure that you understand what the OCM is going to be looking for when they're coming through. You know, there's a lot of trick questions that the OCM is going to be asking. You know, how do you conduct your recalls? Where do you put your quarantine products? Do you quarantine products before you bring them in? 7? Yeah, great. Let's see your SOP on recalls. Let's see all the associated forms with cleaning your restrooms. So we offer mock inspections and issue resolution. We've got a great record of helping people come off with basically what they feel would be an A+ in their OCM inspection, to minimize having to go back, you know, do some corrective action and then reapply for the inspection, because that can be another time sink. Okay. Here's some stuff on local registration, which we'll talk about maybe a little bit later on in the webinar. And then post-launch, I think this is important to consider. Munir, I probably got like 2 minutes left, so just giving you a heads up. Growth and market expansion, which is really important. So now that you've got your facility, you've passed your final inspection, and you've started cracking seeds, you're getting ready, you're still probably about 12 months away from making your first dollar if you're a cultivator. Usually takes about that first year, so you know, getting up and running as soon as possible is really important. But then, you know, what does brand development look like for you? That's something where we can come in and help work with you on, for instance, setting up your website, your digital footprint, you know, your Instagram accounts, which are great. LinkedIn is great for cannabis and cannabis promotion. We do this because we do this with our clients. If you're setting up as a co-manufacturer or perhaps a white labeler, you're just producing products for others, that's awesome. It's a great way to make a lot of money. We work with a lot of brands who look to having their logo put on your products. And you might think, this is for me, this is not for me. What's great about branding and why I think people should at least consider it is because they're paying for everything up front, right? They're paying for the production and then they handle the sales. So all you're doing is focusing on your business that you love doing, right? And not necessarily the brand and promotion for it. You're just sort of catering to clients who are coming in, asking for a production run, and you're getting paid all up front to do it. So if you haven't thought about it, I would at least consider what co-manufacturing could look like as part of what your service offerings are. Okay, and then for instance, after post-launch, you want to be considering ongoing compliance, not just having SOPs, but having your team use the SOPs, review the SOPs, and revise the SOPs is going to be critical. When you do your first run, your SOP for cultivation is likely going to dictate this room must be thoroughly sanitized before I do my first run, right, before I can actually sell that product. If the OCM comes in and saw that you just built a room and you didn't actually document that you cleaned the room before you grew your first harvest in there, they could say you need to quarantine that product because you don't have a record that says that you've cleaned this room. And you're saying, well, look, I just built the room. And they're saying, that's great. Where's the record? Your SOP states this room must be sanitized. Can you show me when you sanitize that room? Oh, you can't. Okay, quarantine that product, call all the retailers you've just sold it to, get it back here. This is very real, and this could very well happen to everyone who has that as sort of not just part of the SOP, but that's an important process that you need to make sure that you're following. Question?
Do you require to have like document control and revision control on all the SOPs?
Yes, absolutely, yes. Everything needs to be documented if you make any revisions. So typically when we write SOPs for folks, we'll have a page about describe the change that was done, what is the date, who signed off on this, and then another co-signer. And then once that happens, you actually need to retrain your staff on that particular SOP to ensure that they're aware of that change. So he was asking about document control. So what document control is, so like, I'm sure everyone here has worked on Microsoft Word, right? And when you got to do that like essay, get it out to the professor, it's like 11 o'clock at night, it's due at midnight, and you've got VF, VFF, final version, final version. Like that's not really good document control, right? So what you really want to have is a filing system, a naming system, a document control system that will provide some level of accountability and traceability for who's reviewed your work, when the work was changed and edited, what changes were made, why they were made, and who approved it. That system is called document control. That can be done on paper, like what you're holding now, or it can be done through software. So there are software systems that specialize in document control for what that looks like. When you're working in a GMP certifiable facility, it is extremely important to have document control. And that can't just be on the copy of the SOP that sits on your desk. That has to be on the copy of the SOP that everyone has access to. So all of that is like the world of document control, if that answers your question. So how are you going to implement that? Okay, and then sort of going forward, what we also help folks with are the executive coaching, commercializing the products, getting them onto shelves, helping to market themselves, staffing and training policies and procedures kind of going forward. E-commerce is really, really important for retailers, but also for cultivators. Social media management, things like SEO, organic growth, earned growth, paid growth are all super important. Okay? And why folks typically need product commercialization: to increase foot traffic, brand awareness for the particular products they're looking to create, to help convert searchers basically into buyers, if they're setting up retail or even just launching a brand, or even trying to let retailers know about something new that's coming out as a cultivator. You want people to be able to find you, right? The website is the salesperson that works for you while you sleep. So really important to make sure that that's set up, it's robust, you have a contact form, and a way to sort of see when people have filled out that contact form so that you can help to actually produce sales, where either you're a cultivator, a manufacturer, a co-manufacturer who's white labeling, or a retailer. And all that's designed to help boost your sales, to promote your product, and to make you more productive. Again, just saying one more time, we've got that ebook online. We have a webinar that's being diffused. The information for that is on the handouts that are just outside this door. My card is just outside that door. I'll be around all day if you want to chat. I could really do a 4-year program on the stuff here, just for cannabis cultivation alone, not even manufacturing. If you're looking in Hungary, we've got some great information on YouTube, which is really helpful. We've done a ton of webinars already going through the application process and post-license application process, so always a free resource. We've covered, I think, basically every state. We work coast to coast, and would love to answer any questions you guys might have. I really appreciate your time and attention coming here today. All right, just before I hand over the torch to, I think Munir's next, or no, is it Jeff? Jeff's next. Any questions for me?
Yeah, so I wanted to do outdoor for starting out just because it's a lower barrier to entry.
Sure.
The biggest expenses I can see were land, employees, fencing, and security.
Yep.
Is there anything else that might be up there with those that I might have missed?
Yeah, your building.
Well, the building would come later. That.
Can't.
So what do you mean?
So you need a building to be able to store your product. So
So I was gonna rent a warehouse to store it in, so we could see how big of a warehouse we might want to build when it comes
Sure.
to actually.
So thought experiment. I worked through this. I've done a few outdoors. I would recommend having a building there, even if it's just a sea can, for the following reason. Let's say you go and you start harvesting your product. You're pulling the plants out of the ground. You're starting your debucking process. You have a truck that's supposed to come. They can't come. Right now, all of a sudden, you have all these totes of weed just basically sitting on the land, spoiling. You need to have an environmental controlled facility where you can put these products in, even temporarily, to be able to store them. If you're looking at doing any kind of propagation, that's going to be really important to have at least a space that is controlled, environmentally controlled, where you can run some of your propagation, your testing, your research and development. I would strongly recommend putting a building on the facility. Even if it's not scrupulously required, just having a controlled, lockable space on that building is going to be really important for you.
Okay.
So I would definitely consider that.
Renting a warehouse is probably not as good of an idea.
You don't necessarily need to rent a warehouse. You can find building solutions. We've done a lot of like sea can retrofits. Does everyone know when I say a sea can, does everyone know okay, so sea containers, tractor trailers, right? The 8.5 feet by 44 feet that go in the back of a tractor trailer. Those shipping containers. Those steel structures you can buy for about $2,000. They come sometimes even retrofitted from some manufacturers, completely, smooth, clean. You just hook them up to water and power, and you would think you're in a pharmaceutical manufacturing facility while you're inside. I would strongly recommend having some kind of lockable facility on your land. Yeah, inside, typically you draw out your perimeter, your fencing. You would have, for instance, every five fence posts down, you would have sort of a longer post. We usually like to set up infrared cameras around the perimeter, facing basically the perimeter or even outside, so you can have some kind of situational awareness. Not visual spectrum, but infrared, so you can see anyone approaching. Don't have great resolution, but it's better for day and night.
Someone was saying using an invisible wall for the fence.
So an invisible fence won't stop someone.
Okay.
Invisible fence will alert you that you've been robbed, blind, right? But that won't comply with OCM regulations.
Okay.
You need to be able to stop someone from unauthorized access, not know about it.
Okay.
Yeah. Fencing, typically 6 feet, galvanized fence, 12-inch topper, 3 rows of evenly spaced barbed wire facing outwards, and then every 100, 150 feet, a taller fence post with IR cameras looking around the facility.
So it does need barbed wire because I didn't have that.
I don't think you need barbed wire. I'd recommend it.
Okay.
Yeah, and you can actually make chain link extremely robust depending on the different options you put in. With the added steel beam or steel lines that go through them, you can make them very, very stiff, so they're almost like walls. And there's also like a triptonic cable you can weave through them to alert you to the fact of someone trying to scale the fence or someone who successfully scaled or cut your fence. And they can even differentiate between wildlife and a human.
Okay.
Yeah, so I would look into some of those options if you're doing it. Cool. Any other questions? Yes.
So you can start with an application first for microbusiness before you're looking at capital, like the first application.
So you can't now. In theory, you could have submitted an application, right? The challenge is the compelling event that the OCM has given all of the preliminary license holders is that they have 18 months to stand up their business, right? And 18 months, I think, is going to be within reason if you've shown demonstrably that you've made advances towards setting up your business and you have delays. I suspect, don't take my word for it, but I would suspect the OCM would look on your application favorably if you can demonstrate that you've tried, right? Like you're waiting on, a material to come in before you pass, or you're waiting for a couple cameras to be installed. Like I think there's some kind of like reasonable expectation of you trying to make advances. But if you haven't secured a property in 18 months, I would expect they'll probably have very little empathy, right? Which is going to be good because, I mean, there's a lot of folks who are not intending to operationalize their license, looking to sell their license, or who don't have the capital to be able to do it. So to give people a timeline is really going to cull the herd, you know, and separate the women from the girls in this industry. So, other questions before I hand it over? Sir.
You mentioned tariffs are coming into pricing. Is there any like future prediction as far as what they'll add on to in 6 months to a year?
I mean, that's more of a political question than a cannabis one.
Okay.
I don't.
But there's no predictions that people are.
Hard to say. When it comes to things like packaging, like tariffs will transcend every aspect of the industry. A lot of packaging comes from China. And you know, with some of the tariffs that we've seen coming in from China, like it's affected you being able to get quotes for packaging. Yeah.
My other question is on land. What are things I should look for when trying to buy a piece of land? I was thinking sewer and electricity would
Sure.
be the biggest things for just
Yep.
on-site for consideration.
Sure.
If I was to choose one, what would I want?
Well,
Sewer or
water.
electricity?
I mean, water is important.
Right.
What is your water source? Also, environmental testing on the land.
Oh yeah, just taking soil samples.
Soil samples are water samples are extremely important. If you go and find land and it's laden with cadmium, lead, arsenic, and mercury, you'll never pass your COAs.
Okay.
Right? Cannabis is, by virtue of it being what it is, it sucks up everything in the soil. And heavy metal testing is one of the 4 pillars of testing that an analytical tester has to do to determine if your product is fit for sale. So CLAM, cadmium, lead, arsenic, mercury, and there are others too. You want to know the composition of your soil.
But the other question on with it is like, if I just buy a blank piece of land, right? I'm
Mm-hmm.
gonna have to put in the sewer or dig a well. I'm gonna have to buy in the electricity and all that stuff. So if I was to look for a site that only had one of these two, what would be the most important, electricity or just the sewer?
Well, I think to talk about electricity and rebates, it's a good segue for my man over here who's been waiting patiently. So I'm gonna,
It's not bad. It's not cheap, but it's not bad money-wise, and it's a pretty easy process.
Okay.
so I'll pass it back over to Jeff. Appreciate everyone's attention. I'll be around all day if you have any questions. We can definitely chat. Thanks, everyone. Cheers. That's all it is.
Should we do a little bathroom break? It's been a good hour. All right. Let's take 5 real quick, and then I'll get going. And then we'll take a little bit longer break at the end of that time period. Energy efficiency. So what to expect? Stretching your budget. I'm sure that's an important thing for everybody. And how you can use energy efficiency to lower your cost. That's basically the main reason that we all pursue it. So I'm going to try to compress 40 years of experience into half an hour. So we'll see how that goes. So what I want to go over today is just some ideas on basic concepts for grow lighting, concepts for HVAC-D. Does everybody know what HVAC means? Heating, ventilating, and air conditioning. The D is dehumidifying. It's a big deal in grow rooms. And then how scheduling your grow rooms are super important as far as what your bill will be. And then we're going to look at some examples that were done using Xcel Energy's rates, where I actually took a facility and modeled it and figured out what the bill would be for an eight flower room grow. So we stacked that up and down based on the square footage. And then we'll talk about Kelley Energy Management, what I do. So basically, I'm the cultivator's agent to go out and get rebates. So I'm not here to sell you on a particular system. There's great systems out there, but when you get ready to purchase or you are sold on a certain system, we'll put it into the modeling and see how much rebate we can do. So basics of grow lighting. Grow lighting is not the same as regular lighting. So in regular lighting, what we're measuring is how bright the light is, and that's usually measured in foot candles. In grow lighting, we're going to call that PPF. So there's a lot of jargon here in this area, but it's good to know. PPF is photosynthetic photon flux. It's the amount of photons that come out of the light that can cause a plant to do photosynthesis. So that's going to be your grow lighting number. How much of that PPF are you putting onto the canopy? So the light on the canopy varies depending on your growth cycle. You're not just going to turn your grow lights on 100% and leave them on for the entire duration of your growth cycle. So the way you're going to do that setting is your cultivation manager is going to have what's called a PAR sensor. He's going to put a PAR sensor underneath the light and say, I'm getting this much PPFD on my plant at that particular distance from the light. So PPFD is like how bright is it? PPF is how much, how bright, and then another thing is the direction of the light. In the old days, which weren't really very old, maybe a couple years ago, almost every grow facility used top lighting. So you know how like if you have a bush in your yard and you pull it back and you look inside and it's all dead looking and brown? That's because no light is making it into the bush. So under canopy sort of is a new way of shooting the light up into the plant and developing more biomass. So you guys are in the business of making money on selling cannabis. You want to basically have thought that through before you purchase your lighting. And then the last thing, which CEE people are using quite a bit, is called fixture efficacy. So when you take the PPF, or the amount of light that can come out of a light fixture, and you divide it by the watts, that's called PPE. So the higher the PPE, the more light comes out of the fixture per watt. So it's a brighter light that uses less energy. So these are some basic things. There's a little bit more detail on there. I'll let you just read through that if you want, but that's your basic 5-minute lesson in grow lighting. So PPF, PPFD, and PPE are going to be the numbers you're going to look at when somebody gives you a brochure and they're going to have all those numbers on there. You're going to look at that. So that's about 55 to 60% of a grow facility's energy is going to be to run the grow lighting. It's a lot. Now HVAC-D. So I'm going to focus on smaller grows and modular grows, and they normally use what's called DX cooling. So DX cooling is what we have at home. It's a central air that sits outside and then the evaporator on the inside. That's called DX, or direct expansion, and there's a compressor that moves refrigerant around it. That refrigerant goes inside and collects heat and brings it outside and gives it up to the outside. So it's pumping the heat around from the air conditioner, from the inside to the outside. So DX systems do sensible and latent cooling. So this is something that you'll talk to your engineers about. Sensible cooling is cooling that makes the temperature on the thermostat or on a thermometer change. So sensible cooling is part of cooling. Another big part of cooling in a grow room is latent cooling. So latent cooling doesn't change the temperature on the thermometer, but what it does is it removes water from the air. So if you've ever been in your basement and the water's spilling out of the air conditioner, that's latent cooling. That's the dehumidification part of your air conditioner. So I went through on my energy models and I looked at several systems, but typical systems that you'll see in grow rooms are going to be multiple DX splits with a dehumidifier. So you might have 4 10-ton air conditioners that sit right outside the wall of the grow room, and then an air handler on the inside. Another one would be a packaged unit. Packaged unit is like a rooftop unit, a great big machine that does cooling. And in grow rooms, the higher tech, more energy efficiency systems are called integrated DX. So on an integrated DX system, it's going to cool the air and dehumidify it and put the heat back into the air at the same time. Because when you cool air to get water out of it, you need to reheat it back up in a grow room. That supply air temperature has to be warm enough so that you don't start the room sweating because it's too cold. So another thing about efficiency on air conditioners is called EER, which is cooling capacity divided by watts, which is sort of like PPFD. It's our PPE. That's how much energy it takes to cool, divided by how much power it takes to operate it. And another thing that you'll start talking to your designers about is the sensible heat ratio. Sensible heat ratio is how the machine can remove water from the air. Probably 50% or more of the power that you're going to use in your HVAC system is going to be for dehumidifying.
I was reading what people were doing is they're buying Quest dehumidifiers versus strictly dehumidification to kind of compensate for lowering cost of HVAC.
Buying more dehumidifiers?
So the HVAC, it's going to bring in fresh air, take out humidity out of the air. But if you buy just a system like a Quest dehumidifier that's strictly for dehumidification, it kind of helps the system keep that room at the level you want.
Yeah, there's all kinds of designs that go into that. But what you're going to have when your grow lights are on is a huge amount of heat coming off the lights. Even if they're really efficient, there's still going to be maybe 20 tons of cooling needed just to get that heat out of there. So when those air conditioners are running, they're also dehumidifying.
Yeah, and I heard you want to spec your HVAC to your BTUs usually?
Yeah, that's the size, the tons of sensible and latent capacity that you need. And typically in larger grow rooms, you'll have 2 units, so some kind of redundancy. These aren't the only ways to do this. I'm just going to go through the ones that I see most often.
About like mini splits, like use
Yeah. So a mini split is basically just a ductless air conditioner that sits in a room, and it can heat or cool, and it has some dehumidification capacity. Mini splits are really not used in big commercial grow rooms because you need more tonnage.
Sure, okay.
I love mini splits, they're great. I have,
Fine for me.
yeah. All right, the third piece of this puzzle that you're going to work on is going to be energy management. So you really need to know how much energy you're using at any given time and have a system that operates that's connected to a computer. So you need to dial it in. You want to have your room temperature, your RH, which is relative humidity, your PPFD, and your photo period programmed. And you don't want to be manually doing that because that will affect your yield. So energy management system is almost required for a grow room. They usually use DDC technology. That means direct digital control. And anymore, we're starting to see customers have really nice energy management systems where they can kind of run the room off their phone. They can go in and they go, oh, it's 77 degrees, 77.3 degrees in flower room 3. And they can, also it sends them alarms. Something's wrong in flower room 3, it's 78 degrees and it's only supposed to be 75 degrees. So that's a great way to keep track of things. Another thing, and you'll see this when you see how much you're going to spend on power here. The real-time energy is a really good thing to have too, where you can actually see how much power is going through your meter.
I was also reading it might be better to buy lights, like you want to buy like a 1,000-watt light, but only run it at 75% efficiency, just the fact that lower power consumption and wear it on your unit.
Yeah, typically when you buy your grow light, it's going to be the most light that you can get out of it is the wattage, but most people are going to dim that light down, and they're going to operate it to the PPFD that they want. Now, one thing to keep in mind when you're looking at grow lights, if you go to a PPFD above, say, 1200, you're really going to need supplemental CO2 because you can actually hurt the plant by hitting it too hard with light unless the CO2 is elevated in the room, and then it can do photosynthesis more efficiently. I'm not going to get into designing that, but CO2, if you're going to go with high production, you're probably going to go with CO2. All right, so what I did for this presentation is I said, if I was going to build one of these, what is it really going to cost me in electric to make a pound of dry flour? That's my cost of goods sold. If I'm a McDonald's, what does it cost me to make a hamburger? So in energy. So this is what we're going to start to review now. So we did an 8 flower room model. Now when I'm going to show you these numbers, this is just flower rooms. I didn't do it in the veg room. I didn't do the rest of the facility. But from our energy modeling, we know that about 80% of the power is going to go into the flower rooms. If you're going to be fussy about anything, be fussy about the flower room because that's where your bill is going to go. There's some assumptions up there. And one of the assumptions that we had was that the yield of the room is 1.5 pounds per top light. That's kind of a... Yeah. So 1.5 pounds and 5.5 turns. So a turn means you ran an indoor grow, you harvest it, it's usually a 9-week grow cycle or a 100-day, it could be different. And then you go in, clean the room, and you bring in the next batch of plants from the veg room and start all over. So 5.5 turns is what's used in this next thing. I use the Excel tariff rate, which is A14, which is probably the appropriate rate for this size of a customer. and I used Minneapolis weather. So that's what we do is we're going to put your grow facility right where it is, and then when we do the energy model, we'll know what your bills are going to be. We've done energy models after a customer was in operation for 3 or 4 years and didn't know what their bills were, and they were like right on. So it's pretty accurate. I've also used just DX equipment. There's ways to do this that are all over the place. You could use chilled water. So you could use air-cooled chillers, you could use water-cooled chillers, you can use heat recovery chillers. That's getting into pretty large systems. So what's my monthly bill? Does anybody pay a monthly electric bill? Has anybody ever given them to them for free? Your whole life, it's taxes and electric bills. So on a 5,000, let's say a micro, on a 5,000 square foot of canopy, if you go with HPS lighting and sort of the cheapo HVACD, your bill is going to be almost $27,000 a month. So if you went with LED lighting, which no duh why there's such good rebates, now it drops it down to $14,800, almost, what is that, $11,000 a month cheaper by going to LED. Now, are there better LEDs out there? Yes, you can do all kinds of crazy stuff to make it more efficient, but I just use a typical LED. All right, so now I'm going to go to like an LED with a real efficient HVACD system, and I dropped it down by another $1,100 a month. And if I go to an integrated system, which has a hot gas reheat coil, I get it down from $1,300 down to $8,500 a month.
There's an online question. What do we need for winter months when we don't need air conditioning and need to heat at night times?
Typically, it depends on how your room is set up. You might need to run heat, or you might need to run, if your room is real well insulated, usually these are built room within a room, the dehumidifier alone can keep the room warm from needing to put supplemental heat into the grow room at night. Now, when I go into my best case scenario, I'm going with LED, and this isn't the best case scenario in the world, but I was trying to get good, better, best on here. LED integrated with hot gas reheat coils and energy management system, and this is called toggling. So toggling is not new. It's been done by college kids in their room trying to keep from getting the electric company knowing that they're growing. But basically, it's turning half the lights off when the other lights are on. So let's say at noon, all my lights come on rooms 1 through 4, and then at midnight, rooms 5 through 8 come on. So I'm never getting all the lights hitting the grid at once. They're all operating toggled. So that is the cheapest power bill that you can get. Now, there are disadvantages to doing that, labor being the main one. So, but if I go from an LED junky system, I'm at $27,000 a month, and I've dropped $20,000 off a month off by going with better equipment and toggling. So obviously, that's what I would like you to do. And there's a cost premium to go every step of the ladder, too. So it isn't like it's going to be the cheapest system. So your business people, you want to sell this dry flower. So let's talk about what is the cost of goods sold. So if I go with, say, my micro grow, and what is my electric dollars per pound? That's what you're doing. You're making pounds, right? So my yield is 2,500 pounds per year, and my electric cost per pound is $127 a pound. that means if the price drops down, my break even is going to be way higher than everybody else's because I'm not energy efficient. So if I go to the best case scenario, I'm down to $33 a pound. So you can see where energy is a huge push as far as making money selling cannabis. So this is just the cost per pound in the flower room. So it would probably be maybe double that over across the whole facility by the time you did the veg rooms and all the other things that use electric in the. But as you're looking at energy efficient equipment, to me, that's what I want to be, the $33 a pound guy. Because as what happens in these markets, and Michigan's a good example, a lot of licenses, supply starts to come onto the market, and the price is ridiculously high. You can get $3,000 a pound. But then people see that, and they want to get in on it. And eventually, the price per pound drops down. It could go as low as $200 a pound, or even lower in the future. So if you're going to be in this to win it, you want to be at the energy efficiency end of it. So let's talk about a little bit about rebates. I've met with Excel and Minnesota Power people to go over the rebate. There is a good rebate from Excel, fantastic. And there's different kinds of rebates. As you get going, you'll learn about that. Also, co-ops, if you're out in the rural area, do have rebates. So if you want to see, if you haven't selected a site yet, you can go GIS, Minnesota utility map, and it'll show a GIS map, and you can click on your site and see who the utility is. That's handy to know, because it might affect how much you spend on your facility. If you can get a lot of rebates, you can build it to super efficient. So this particular spreadsheet kind of takes the rebate and calculates it based on $450 a kW of savings, which is the custom energy calculation. You could beat these numbers if you go with the CEE guys rebate on the small micros. So don't write that down and think that's the number. It could actually be more on the lighting side. But just to kind of walk you through it, if I was going to do a custom one-time rebate, what I'm doing is I'm lowering the demand. So the demand here is 1,773 kW. So a building like this would probably be 150 kW of demand. So your facility is going to be getting up there. Not like the mines in northern Minnesota where they could have 50 megawatts of power, but you're going to be in that ballpark. And as you go with higher efficiency equipment, you can get a rebate of $450 a kW under the Excel rebate system. So as you're shopping around and making equipment choices, you can factor that rebate in and see what your ROI is. Am I going to spend an extra $2 million on high efficiency, and even after the rebate, it's a 10-year payback? You'll need to do those kind of calculations. So talk a little bit about Kelley Energy Management, what we do. So what we do is we take your energy or your building plans, and we incorporate them into an energy model. We take that floor plan, all the HVAC submittals, all your grow light assumptions, and we'll factor it in there. And then we'll actually sit down with your cultivation schedule and say, you're going to run 5 turns a year. So we'll put that into the schedule. then we can give you the number that's like, well, here's what your bill's going to be under these different scenarios. And then we can apply for the rebate for whatever system you've selected. We're looking at the baseline model. The baseline model is basically what's allowed by code. In cannabis, the baseline on grow lighting is generally going to be high pressure sodium, or it could be ceramic metal halide, which is another style of light in the bedrooms and that sort of thing. So we're going to take your plan that you probably will get from your lighting vendor. So the lighting vendors, normally what they do is they get the copy of your flower room and they find out what's your recommended PPFD, and then they'll do hope he makes it. Once we know the PPFD, then they will design it in software to like throw the right amount of light out for your grow light. So so if you wanted to go through that process, it's going to take 6 to 8 weeks probably to determine the rebate amount. We do a lot of work on that model to get it to set up in our system, and then you'll get the savings approved. Now I don't pay the rebate. Christian pays the rebate. Is he in here? Yeah, there he is. He's writing the checks. So I have to make sure that his engineer agrees with our model. So that wrangling can take 6 to 8 weeks, and our best effort is to try to get it accurate. So once we get the rebate approved, there'll be basically a reservation letter. Is that how you guys do it? Yeah. So they'll reserve the funds. They'll say, this as designed is worth $350,000. You'll get a letter saying, now if you changed the design and you backed out of the LEDs and you went with something else, that money just goes away. But basically, based on your design, this is the rebate. And then once your equipment is put in, then they're going to come out and they're going to count the lights or do any number of inspections to make sure that they're not overpaying and that the accurate analysis that went in is what was actually done. Now, we will work with you at the end. Let's say, typical thing that I find is we were going to have 80 lights in the grow room, but when we hung the dehumidifier, it was in the way, so we had to take 2 lights out. That would be the sort of thing that we usually see. We can adjust it. After it's completely in, then it goes back out to Excel or the company doing the rebate, and then they'll issue you a check after that. So this isn't any kind of upfront funding, but it's a one-time rebate for being energy efficient. So I'm sorry.
So if we had considered doing phases of the build on our facility, we really would have to do all the lights at once to take full advantage of a rebate.
Well, if you did the whole facility and then you say you did 3 rooms to start with, then it could be submitted as here's the first 3 rooms, and a partial payment would get made.
Okay,
so
you estimate your whole facility, but you could potentially build it in phases.
Yeah, or you could turn it in a phase 1 to start with. There's all kinds of different ways that people do that. Basically here I'm to pitch you on energy modeling. So energy modeling is what we do. We use government software called Energy Plus to do the modeling that's run in every bit of the building is considered in how that thing works. And then there's interactive effects. So when you got a dehumidifier running in your room, it's putting off some heat So if that dehumidifier is running when the lights are on, that's some extra heat that needs to be removed. So there's a lot of ways that the things dive in on each other and operate. Yes, sir.
Now, if we want to build this facility from the ground up, can you use that software for the building itself when you're making the blueprint?
Usually the architect will do it in Revit, and the Revit document gets converted into a PDF, and we'll take that into our software.
Okay.
So it isn't really design software. It could be done, you could use it to design it, but generally the architect's going to do that part of it. So like I said, we want to ensure that you get a maximized rebate, but we also want to make sure that any savings that we calculate could be defended to the nth degree. So we can't put our thumb on the scale. The thing of it is this energy efficient equipment is good and it works. So that's the saving grace of this. So here's our contact info. If you've got a facility in mind, easiest thing to do would be like send me an online meeting, and we'll kind of go through your plans, and we've done several, probably 300 of these at this point, so we can kind of get your counts and say we think your ballpark going to be in this amount of rebate. Yes, sir.
It seems like the rebates are based on how much energy we're saving, which is more energy efficient.
Yes. Yeah, so why does a company give money away to do less sales? So basically energy efficiency programs are set up to reduce the load on the grid. So in that way, it's less generating capacity for everyone. So it's sort of a backward way of looking at it, and it's funded by charges on customers' bills. So they're not just donating the money, there's a funding mechanism for it. And it's all done under the Public Service Commission's purview. So Christian gives you that check, he's still not out of the woods until the Public Service Commission reviews what he gave out and said, yeah, this is all legit. Your documentation is good. So here's our contact information. Looks like we've got just a few more minutes for questions. Does anybody have any questions?
Do people ever connect any solar panels and then put that into the grid that make up for some of the power so they don't have to spend money on it?
Yeah, so solar, I've looked at it and I want it to work. I have solar panels on my own house. It's just so expensive to put all the solar panels in. And when the demand is like 1,000 kW, you're never going to have enough room to even have enough solar panels. So.
Does running lights at like nighttime when the grid has less people using power help with the rebate?
Yes.
Okay.
Well, it doesn't help with the rebate unless you're toggling.
Okay.
So if you run, in the utility business, they call that a load factor. So if you've got 1,000 watts or 1,000 kW running every hour of the year, that's 100% load factor. A really terrible load factor would be like ball fields. They come on and there's 1,000 kW and then they go off in 3 hours, and that's a low load factor. So if you don't toggle your lights, your load factor drops down to around 60%.
Was there other rebates around? Like, wasn't there one for controls that Excel was offering? Like, I think when I talked to him, it was so dehumidification, HVAC, lighting, and then they said something about controls.
Yeah, so that would be the EMS control. So you do want to do that. So you kind of almost can't not do it, but you want to be able to schedule. So if you go into a large building down in downtown, they probably got a Johnson Controls system in there that's operating the whole building. This is very similar. It's like you're going to operate a production facility. Yes, sir.
I've heard, I don't know where it was from, but that for extraction, like if people are looking at doing solventless extraction, there might be possibility for rebates through that. Is that something you guys deal with, or?
We haven't really been able to get into that yet, or in manufacturing facilities or dispensaries. Dispensary is sort of like a jewelry store. You want to go high efficiency, but it is not going to be the major amounts of energy savings like you would have in a cannabis grow facility.
My other question was for HVAC. I haven't heard anything about rebates for that. Would a decrease in the amps on something like that help with the rebate possibly?
The HVAC is eligible for rebates.
Okay, I was kind of, so I had put an ad in the paper looking for investors, and one of the people that called me was actually Excel Energy, just asking me some of the things that I had seen, and they had told me that there wasn't anything for HVAC, so I don't know.
Yeah, so there's a custom program. So anything that reduces KW is eligible for a rebate. Now, when you're talking to your utility rep, there's two styles of rebate. And you probably should know this when you go to talk to them. There's prescriptive. Prescriptive rebates are 70 cents a watt for lighting. 70 cents per watt saved versus HPS. It's simple, it's easy to calculate. Now, if you go into the CEE program, it could go up to, is it over $1 or almost $1 a watt saved? So that's the easy way to do it. The way that I've talked about it today is the custom way.
Okay, so mostly it's just based on your energy efficient of watts.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So if you can get the same amount of light for less watts, that's more efficient. They're well aware of that, so they make a simple program where you can go ahead and sign up and use that.
And then HVAC ties into that as well, right?
Yeah, and if we're looking at your project and that pays more, we're going to send you that way. So, and it usually does pay more, especially for the micros. So we're not here to say do it the hard way every time. It's just do it the way that gets the most payment, because you'll be into that market and you want to keep your cost of goods sold down. So and the cost of building is expensive too. Yes, sir?
You keep saying it's good for micros. What's good for mesos?
So I think the micro, I don't know if someone here from CE wants to kind of talk about that, but they have a certain cut threshold where they can offer the enhanced rebate that is available for the micros.
Come stop at our booth in the next room over. Sure. We'll explain the HVAC. We have Excel here with us. We'll talk about the micros and the difference.
All right.
Yeah. So whatever pays the most is what we're. Another thing you can do that a lot of growers do is when they get that reservation letter, that can be part of the financing package, but it isn't like collateral. It's that's a conditional offer that it can only be paid if the equipment goes in as it was modeled. So it could go up or down at the end.
Does Excel have a list of equipment that they would say is recommended?
I think they have a list of equipment that tells you what is the baseline efficiency, so you can go above that.
Okay.
So, and that's another thing about what we do is we don't really represent a certain equipment supplier. There's tons of great ones out there, but there's discussions that you'll have on lighting, like, do you want to go above a certain PPFD, or there's so much to this, but when you get into the energy modeling side of it, that's where we can help you, and we work for the customer. So we don't work for the cultivation owner. So we're going to work as your agent. That's the way I think of it. It's like well, you know all about this stuff. I'm busy doing the 9 million step process from the licensing. And it's like, my mind can't handle all this, so just go ahead and take care of that for us. So I think I maybe have time for just a couple more questions, or we could all get a break. And I know you'd probably hate that, but.
Actually, I was going to ask, my presentation is pretty quick. It's fast. Obviously, if you guys have any questions, we'll stay. But do you guys need a break right now, or you guys want to keep going? It's up to you. Keep going. Keep going? All right.
Keep it rolling? All right. I got to swap the microphone, and we'll thank you for listening. Appreciate it.
Hello, hello, hello.
Tell my wife you guys clap.
Hello. Is this thing working?
Yeah, it's only for the live stream.
Okay, gotcha.
You can just clip it on. Lapel.
Can I just hold it? Can I just?
Hold it or pinch it.
All right, I'll just hold it. My guy Sal. So hey guys, I'm Scott. Thanks for being here today. Kind of did a quick intro, but a little bit more detail. I'm one of the co-founders of Stash Stock. We started in 2015. We mortgaged our houses to get to this point, no VC money or any of that kind of stuff. So I know a lot of you guys, and some conversations I was having earlier about, putting your all into it. So I know the feeling with having no safety net, and it's been a crazy journey. We came from, the core team came from a company called Title Source, which is part of the FOC, which is Rocket Mortgage. We're based out of Detroit. And so we worked with integrations with these major U.S. financial systems, which is why our connection, our integration with Metric is good, because we kind of came from that hellfire. And I was a project manager at the time. Our CEO now, my business partner, Mike, would come in and just reek like weed. And so he was a caregiver for 7 years. And so we saw this kind of happening in Colorado and California, so we decided to take a stab at it, and really got into the RFID part, which I'll get into in a little bit. And then it kind of grew into what are the other compliance pieces that companies need. The real situation. So the real situation is right now, for the next 3 to 5 years, things are going to be good, and I hope they always stay good. But realistically, being in 23 states like we are, we've seen it where it's $45,000 pounds, and now, around $1,000, $500, between outdoor or indoor, and there's some kind of, differences as far as that goes. So while the getting is good, it's always great to be on the first floor, but don't forget that, right now, I was in a conference, thank you. I was at a conference in New Jersey, and it's open bar and joints and weed everywhere, and it's like, who the fuck's putting this on? Like, there's no branding, there's no nothing, and it's just like it's careless. And so, part of this is being on a budget, and it's not so much being cheap, but it's really just like being aware of where to put your capital and where to make your mark and how to get people interested in the brand and what you're doing. And that's why that kind of bleeds into why it's important. And my goal today, guys, if I just give you guys, not even me, just from this conference, even one takeaway is a win. So I hope you guys get more than one takeaway, but that is the goal today, based on the experiences of being in the decade or being in the industry for a decade. Oops. I thought this must have gotten erased. But again, budget doesn't mean be cheap. Just be responsible. Couple examples, or one example is that a lot of the requirements are going to be key cards, which a company like Meneer does, and so every door needs to be blocked. And I had a guy who was like, "No, I'm going to save money, and instead of having it, run lines to it, I'll just put a lot of door keys in there." Well, I've been there, and the battery runs out, and he's unscrewing the door lock to and it's like, okay, fine, you save some money, but the time, your time is one of your biggest assets. And so it's like, it's not about being cheap. It's what makes sense. If something's going to break in a year, buy the one that's not going to break that's a little bit more expensive. So it's kind of just making sure you do your homework on what makes sense as far as that goes. So the sky's the limit, not the limit is the sky. Whoops. And some of the non-negotiables are going to be when you're spending your budget is obviously the layout of the facility, your cameras, again, curate, the door locks, your generator, your builds, the layouts. All the guys that are growing, I've been in facilities they spend millions of dollars on, and the dry room is like the smallest room in the place, and it's like, oh shit, all your plants got moldy because there's no wind, there's no space in between your plants. So just things to be mindful of is just. And again, some of it's like, oh yeah, that makes sense, but sometimes people will make those decisions because they're so amped to get the license and get going that like they'll say, they'll like trick themselves into thinking I don't need that, and then all of a sudden this is a problem, you know. And then there's the product, the racks, the lights, the tables, gloves, machinery for extraction. I think one of the guys in here was talking about extraction, maybe you. That's stuff that you want to make sure you don't cheap out on that. And with the racks, there's systems like PIP, where a rolling racks, it doesn't need to be PIP, I just happen to know those guys, where you can get more plants in because your racks move over, or you can save some money and just get standard just racks that don't go anywhere. But these are all things that you need to kind of consider and what you want to do and how many more plants you can get on those racks. Is it a two-tier system? Is it just one single table? Compliance. There's state recs, testing, and there's metric. And this is the space that I live in, and we'll dive into that in a second here. I put employees up there. I work with quite a few, 350 facilities just shy of, and you don't want your employees to leave because they're making an extra dollar somewhere else. So the best grows that I've been to are the people that take their employees and they want them to learn. They want them to grow. So just, again, the stuff like just seems like, yeah, I know, but you have to live it, because what happens is you lose a lot of your staff and there's a lot of turnover. Everyone wants to get in here because it's like, oh, we're growing weed, but then like there's a business to run. There's tables to be cleaned. There's lines to be cleaned. There's things to be mixed. And so just be wary of that. It's just one of those things where I see it all the time, and it just, I don't know, just be mindful. And then networking. I kind of said it earlier. These events are huge. And as a grower or someone that's building a product, everyone, and it's funny because I get, oh, I'm different because I'm going to do it this way, and I'm a master grower, and I'm going to, do all my trimmings by hand. You're looking at it wrong. If you got to tell a stranger you're the best grower, like you're already fucked. Like you need to know that I'm confident at what I'm doing. Your thought needs to be, where is my product going to live on the shelf at the dispensary? How am I going to differentiate from the other shiny package next to it? And a lot of that is networking. So you're in that circle, and I'm selling, and you're going to buy it off me because we've got trust together. We've seen each other. We've been at these kind of events. So I'm telling you, like, these ground floor events are very important and something you can't really discount. So cost of compliance. So kind of going back into like the being cheap about things or not being cheap about things, and what is your time worth? And so, we've got tools that are going to be, we call them dumb, but just manual. You got smart and integrated. And then we'll get into some RFID stuff. So cost of compliance, I mean, these are some of the things you have to do. There's actually more on the list that you have to do, but like tagging, that takes time. Writing down the strain name on the back of the tags. It's not necessary, but you're going to come into a spot where like, I don't know what the strain is or what this plant is maybe, and then you're going to start doing that. That takes time. Scanning your moves, moving plants, changing the phase, auditing locations, taking the wet weight in, just all these things. And the more that you spend on not the plant, the quality goes down too. So you have to keep that in mind. If I'm always just doing things, if I'm super compliant, that means that I'm not spending the right time with my plants. So you got to find that balance. So economies of scale with technology, and again, there's other platforms out there. But Sal? Anything? Can you just hear those guys?
Actually, if you don't use his system, you're gonna be fucked.
Thank you, Sal. Thank you. I didn't pay him to say that. He said that. I was like, hey, is it cool if you say that, Jeremiah? Again, the products that we provide, it's modular. Pick and choose what makes sense for you. But as you guys scale up, which I hope you guys do, your labor and all that stuff goes up. But if you use the right technology, the scale it gradually goes up. I'm not going to charge you more for the same system, right? But your employees are going to have more packages, more plants, more labels, more packaging. And so just it's something to think of. And so when it gets into some of the things, again, you can spend your time on writing the destruction and the plant moves and putting them on sheets and this style. You could upgrade a little bit and using some Excel sheets, and that's fine too. And then when it gets into how we think you should do it is going to be the first tool, which is our RFID scanner. So this is literally what the guy was doing, and now with this device, and I'll be at CannaCon, I'll bring all the different solutions you guys can actually touch them. But you can go into a room, and like this gentleman over here has got a 3-tier system, but you'll go in there and bzzz, yep, did it, and then within 4 to 5 minutes, you can audit a room of 1,000 plants, or you can move packages, audit packages, do a manifest check. Instead of looking at a clipboard saying what packages go where, I can take the scanner, bzz, yup, it matches, and get it out the door, or bring it into the door. So there's tools you can use, and again, the goal is to get your time back so you can focus on the product or the other things that are going to come up. Second tool is going to be a scale system. So we capture the wet weight. This is something you have to do. You can either write this stuff down, or you can scan each one. We bucket all your strains for you accordingly, take all your wet weight in. When you're done, you hit send, and it goes right to the state. Alternative is, again, I put it on a scale. I write down the last 4 digits of the tag number. I write down the weight. Then I have to put it in a CSV format, then upload it into metric. What's your time worth to you? Then it comes. What's that?
Question.
Oh, yes, sir.
What kind of software do you guys usually run? I know there's 3 softwares out there right now that are strictly for cannabis, and they can even go to state. What kind of software is the system using?
We built the software. This is our software.
So it's custom software?
Yes, this is custom software. Okay. And it's a pick and choose. So if you want the RFID scanner I showed earlier, you can choose that one. If you want the scale system, choose that one. And then usually, it's a seed to sale, they call it, but it's really like if you rather go through another platform to do X, Y, Z, I don't want to give you something. My biggest compliment, the company's goal has always been, if you're happy with the product, you're going to tell your friend, you're going to tell your buddy, you're going to tell someone. And I get a lot of calls. Bobby told me I had to use you. I'm not sure exactly what you guys do, but Bobby said to call you. That to me is worth.
What does your software do that the standard software that people are right now using not use?
Well, again, it's if you want to weigh your plants and write everything down, you can do that, right? Or you can use a system like ours. Okay. So it's kind of pieces through. Go ahead.
I guess to piggyback off that, this ties in with metrics system though.
So we have one of the lowest error rates in the United States with metric. Up until a week ago, before he was let go, I have a standing meeting with the head of product over there. And so it's very well connected. They actually came out, if you YouTube us, they came out to Detroit, where we're based out of, and they actually did like a promotional video, which I don't think they've done that with any other integrator. But these are the things you have to do, especially on like the extraction size was like serving sizes and the percentages. I mean, do you want to fill all that stuff out, or do you want it to be automated and spit out, right? And this is not just one, right? You're not making one gummy, you're not making one pre-roll. You're making cases of pre-rolls, and each one needs to do that. So you can hit a button, have it all spit out in one shot, or you can screw around and then copy and paste a QR code and all that kind of stuff. So again, if you just want the labeling, we'll hook you up with the labeling. By the way, there's no contracts. We don't hold anyone hostage, none of that nonsense. It's test it out. Here's 2 weeks. You get sick. You need another week. Take the other week. Like, it's not, again, I want to leave a good taste in your mouth, so you tell the next person, hey, give these guys a shot. Like, that's the biggest compliment. Then it gets into more of your sales and fulfillment side, what packages you're going to sell, what strain it is as the orders come in, and then being able to automate the manifest in metric. Again, just making your jobs a little bit easier and being able to get your product from that seed stage to the final selling of it. And then on the back end, we give you guys some, these are just kind of just some, I don't even think these ones are the ones that really exist in our system. If you guys want to see it, let me know, and I've got my laptop here. But really, on the cultivation side too, is how long are these strains in? Like, it's great, your X amount of days in veg, flower, drying, that's great. But then it gets into, what age am I killing these plants at? What percentage of these plants am I killing? If I'm killing plants in the first 14 days, I can live with that. If I'm killing plants at day 50 after I spent lights, nutrients, labor, love, I probably got shitty genetics. Maybe my systems aren't doing what they're supposed to do. Maybe my crew isn't as good as they are, you know? So again, we'll give you some insight into what that is. And then obviously we can even take it down to how much package weight are these strains giving you, so you can know what strains I want to focus on, what I want to maybe dump. Anyway, so again, you don't have to use any systems, but I think it really comes down to what makes sense for your business, what makes sense for your time, where you want to focus on, and what do you want to maybe have something, you know. It's like, I don't know, I'm older than I look, but, you know, do you want to have the manual windows, or you want to hit the button and it goes down? It's really, it's maybe not the best analogy, but the one that just popped in my head. Again, this goes into more of like, the RFID has a finder feature. If I lose something, I can say, hey, where's package 1, 2, 3, 4? And it will help you find it. So you go in a room, if it sees it, it starts beeping, and it gives you like a hot and cold indicator of how close you are to that package or plant. And again, I'll have all this stuff at CannaCon in a couple weeks. You guys can see it. As far as your facility, guys, I know they were talking about it. Things to kind of consider. The tags you're using have RFID in them, and we're just piggybacking off that. But I've got people that build out facilities and like, oh shit, I didn't put metal walls. So with RFID, there's a concept of bleed. Now we can mitigate that bleed, and we've got tips and tricks to help you do that. But a lot of people are like, oh shit, I wish I already spent all this money on this facility. I wish I would have put either aluminum in the cavity of the wall or built the corrugated or like the refrigerator panels, or all different like DPS panels, I think they're called. So it's something to kind of, again, just things that when you're going out through that build out, if it's an extra $10,000, I think it'd be worth it to put those walls in so you can utilize the technology that you're paying for anyway. And that was it. So I don't know if you guys have any questions or anything like that, but
This is cloud or SaaS based?
it's SaaS based, and we're in Azure, so a Microsoft shop. Yep.
Is that so?
If you want to really go deep into the weeds, we can have a. Yeah.
I'm an Azure guy, so.
Okay. Yes, sir.
I'm just curious if you have more of like a kind of in-depth demonstration videos on like YouTube or something like that. Or
We can, after this, we can come find me, and I'll actually show you the platform if you want to see what it looks like. No problem. And like I said, I'll be at CannaCon in 2 weeks, I think in August 8th and 9th. And yeah, you guys come by, and, you know, love to show you. You guys hit the button. You guys see it picking up the tags and all that.
What other stuff does the software do? Is it just inventory control, or does it do anything else?
For right now, yeah, it's basically seed to sale. So it does repackaging for you. You can look at, like, for example, what's available, what's not available. So I got 100 pounds. But like, so in metric, for example, it just says this is what I have. But if Billy calls me on Monday and says, hey, I want 20 pounds, not till Friday, you can create those orders. So basically, you're reserving inventory. So just like there's a lot of these kind of examples. Another example is when you guys are harvesting. If you're not there and you're the owner of the facility or just a harvest manager, in real time, you can open up your laptop and you can see how many plants have been harvested without actually being at the facility.
So you can have a QR code on like with batch numbers?
Yeah, so we can, and another thing, you can generate your own QR codes, or If you, one second, yeah. If you want to have that QR code, maybe go back to your brand, you can do that as well. There's a lot you can do. It's just, it's interesting. The system overall is very flexible. It's what do you want to do with it, and how do you want to adopt it. What's up, Kat?
Does this integrate with LeafLink or replace LeafLink?
So it does integrate with LeafLink. LeafLink's prices have skyrocketed recently. And we are actually, tomorrow I am talking to Apex, a marketplace. And yeah, so I would, and so we're going to be, I hope, I don't want to, I don't know what tomorrow's going to bring, but.
So this could possibly replace that?
Correct. Now, through this system, though, it's not going to be as robust, but in like, say, Michigan, if I'm selling to you, and you, and at the end of the day, that's all I can grow, because all my output is, and I've got my customers, I got my circle, we can create a menu of what you have on tap. It's a live menu, and you email it. It's a live menu, so you can refresh it, and the pars will all change, and you can do that. But if you want something more robust, definitely Apex is where I'd push you guys before LeafLink. Another one, again, a company, this is live stream, they're going to see it and get talk shit. Bring it, I don't care. But what happened is like they got so much investment. Well, guess what? The bills due. And so they went from what I hear, like $1,000 a month to $20,000. Who's going to do that? So they, and so anyway.
So you not only do help with from seed to sale, so you're going all the way to the sales side as well. So you can actually integrate your menu, live menu, into the sales aspect. So you wouldn't.
We could. We have people that say, hey, this is what I have. What do you want? Now, again, it's not like a grocery cart.
Right.
At least not right now, and I don't think we're going to explore that if this with Apex goes well. So we can focus on other things that we want to do. And but it's very, if you want something really simple, here you go. If you want something that has links and more on the logistics side, then Apex is who I would say to go.
Minnesota hasn't really talked about to people with licensing is that sailing aspect. Like they haven't really talked about how we need to have that middleman.
Well, especially again because your store is selling, if on the dispensary side, if I'm running out of blueberry gelato, for example, I don't know who's got blueberry gelato. And again, these are the events that you need to kind of start meeting people. But the marketplace gives you a little bit more who's got this so I can find you faster, quicker, and then figure it out. Does that make sense, guys, how I'm explaining it? Cool.
So what you're kind of saying is you could link this up to a bunch of different grow facilities. Someone could say they want the blueberry gelato. They go through the list to see what grow facilities got how much of it.
But that'd be something like an Apex would be. Mine is like, hey, this is what I have, and I can email it to the people. But if you're looking for more of a, like, I'm looking for this, it will help you find it.
Are you guys a custom API or don't need API?
What do you mean, technology man?
Well, if you want to connect with other software,
We can, yeah, we can. Like again, we've got a LeafLink integration.
you're in Azure, you use
Yeah.
Power BI for reporting.
We do use Power BI for reporting, yes. Yeah, we can. We're very cautious on who we integrate with. We're very, it's, I don't know, it's just, this is my baby. This is our baby. We work really hard at it, and, we want to make sure that we're picking the right partners and all that kind of stuff.
Now, if a cultivation center doesn't so for everybody to kind of see what's going on, right? Would they all have to have your software, or could they have a different software?
Again, my version of the part you're talking about is more like emailing. So if you know their emails, email it away.
Okay.
Right? Does that make sense? And yeah, if you guys have any more detailed questions, we can definitely jump in it. But I promise it wouldn't take long. And anything else, or you guys?
We're moving into a panel Q&A now, so invite people to stick around for about 5-10 more minutes as we go through just some general Q&A or general questions for anyone who has anything about what you've seen today. So we're good. We can do that.
Yeah, and then after that, what we want to do is these rooms are so important. You guys being together is very important for your own networking as well. So the rest of the afternoon, we just kind of want to all hang out together after this panel. Scott's awesome. Everyone that spoke today is awesome. The reason I started saying you're awesome is because he knows so much about metric. He works in every metric market. You guys are gonna have a lot of questions about metric and reporting the metric. And we've seen operators in other markets and new markets, when it comes time to actually doing stuff or right before, it's like a million questions. So it's gonna be a really good source for that.
I agree.
Yeah, we
Thank
found
you,
out
Kat.
there's Stash Stock users in this room earlier
He did not.
by chance. Any market I go to, there's somebody that knows Scott and they have their product for him to try.
Ah, stop it.
So
Stop it.
one of the questions that I have, sorry,
Yep.
one of the questions that I have specifically for Scott is you said that your software has some of the lowest error percentage, like in the state, or sorry, in the country, when it comes to metric integration. So what you're saying is that you guys make errors.
Everyone makes errors, yes.
Okay, no further questions.
That's my buddy Lucas, if you guys are wondering.
Yes. So again, I'm Munir Haq. I'm president at Curate. You guys met Jeff Kelley, Lucas McCann, and Scott Moisen over there. So we're going to go into just kind of give you some zingers and a few takeaways. But also, if you have any questions, like, just fire away. So something I want to ask everybody here. So everyone here has worked in pretty much every legal market. I'd like you guys to give the fine folks here just some advice, like one piece of advice for a new market that's starting, a positive takeaway that you learned from other markets.
One thing that sticks out to me is start small. You know, if you're gonna try like the new thing, I feel is like the under canopy lighting. You don't need to go balls out and change every single room. Start with one, and a lot of these guys will do that. Sometimes you'll get a pretty decent rate on that as well. So you can make sure where to kind of fine tune all the knobs, because again, you don't want to go into it and you find out I'm not good at these lights or supporting these lights, and then you've bought a whole facility's worth. So I'd say, you know, just one bite at a time would be my takeaway.
I think that's great advice, Scott. For mine, I think what makes this a particularly challenging market is one where the regulator is extremely involved. So for those who are involved operators, there are markets where the regulator was very hands-off. Oklahoma was a market like that. The issue with Oklahoma was that market was great for a short amount of time, and then the market crashed. So one thing that's really important to remember is when you're a business coming into a new market, in a new industry, in a new legal state, and you're new at this altogether, is that things are probably going to be really great, you know, once you're up and running and operational, right? The first 3 to 5 years, your revenue will potentially be the highest it'll ever be as a cultivator. Keep in mind that gravity takes hold of every market, and that after that 5-year mark hits, price compression will probably come in. Now, one of the reasons why I like the Minnesota market specifically is because there are a lot of, let's call them regulatory brakes, like train brakes or car brakes that are kind of built into the market to prevent it from becoming a runaway market like Oklahoma or even to an extent California. And because of this, that 3 to 5 year mark is going to have a little bit more of an extended, let's call it sunny day season than maybe many other markets will. And that effective gravity will occur at a rate that's much less drastic than it has in other markets. But my advice for you would be to, if you're looking at your pro formas, understand there needs to be an adjustment after 3 to 5 years. Every business plan that you ever look at for cannabis is always a pie in the sky, never going to happen, astronomical projection business. And if you're in this, it really has to be for the right reasons. And it really has to be because you're passionate about the industry, you feel good about what you're doing and what you're contributing to the community, and it's something that you would only see yourself doing no matter what. Because if you're in it for a quick buck, you're going to have a reality check very quickly.
Can I get that back really quick, Lucas? Sorry, Jeff. Just really quick. It hit a chord. When pounds were $5,000, a lot of people went and they borrowed money based on that amount, right? Hey, I can produce all this cannabis for $5,000 a pound. Well, when things went to $1,000 a pound, that means their projections were off by 80%. And a lot of people borrowed money that they couldn't pay back. And I've had people, customers, and I got kids at home, I got a family, and I understand it. And you can hear their voice cracking because they put everything into it, and it was basically gone. And so that's just something that I think that's better than the first takeaway is like what Lucas just said, is that what is today is not going to be tomorrow, and you need to be mindful of that. And so I don't know. I just wanted to share that because it's happened a few times. I don't know.
Amen to what everyone else is saying. I would say, if I was going to give you one piece of advice, is do not use high pressure sodium grow lights. They are expensive, very expensive to operate, and very shaky in terms of their long-term value. So the hippies in California stole those lights off of street lights and started growing with them. There was no magical grow lighting industry back then, so it was just that's a legacy thing.
I'd like to add one thing to that, and it's to encourage all of you to, because you guys are gonna go out and find the family you're gonna build and what vendors you're gonna work with and who's gonna be part of your ecosystem as you're building out ongoing. Do your homework, vet them, see if they're right for you. It's two ways, right? It's like, yes, they can work with you because you're paying them, but like, do they pick up your phone call on Saturday when you really need them? Do you have a point person? Do they have the empathy that you need from them? Also, a very important thing, have they done this before, right? I do all the security and compliance, and sometimes I get architectural plans on like the retail side where the vault is like at the other end of the store. And I was just like, has this architect ever, done a design for a dispensary? No, they would know that the vault needs to be really close to the POS station so we can get product back and forth. So things like that, right? Just do your due diligence. This is why I like Steven and Canna Connect too a lot, because he builds his community of just information and people. And so to add to what I just said, you have a hub right there. You guys have any questions, like funnel it through Canna Connect. And yeah, so that's what I want to add, is I've seen so many markets not do that, and it just doesn't end well.
Maybe to build on that, a useful exercise is to, not even take anything you've seen from us presented to you today at face value, because that's just like a really good practice to have, is go and validate everything we've said.
Yeah.
You really shouldn't take anyone's, expertise at that value until you've sort of done the research. I'm talking about things that go beyond Chat, GPT, and Google. When I say research, I'm talking about actual research, like conversations, books, historical data, financial data. Like that's research. If you're just pumping things into Google and expecting things to kind of work out for you, that might be tough. So talk to people who have done this before. That's a great expertise. I mean, I know there's a lot of expertise sitting up here today, but trust yet validate.
Now, so we talked about something positive to take. On that note, we all do different things here. Can you guys name one costly mistake the folks can avoid that you've seen be a costly mistake in other markets?
Building too big, too quick. Also building too cheap, too slow. Those are two things that I've seen. Remembering you're a small business is really important. And I think, especially with vertically integrated micros, there's a lot of risk in that license type, because what people try to do is they try to be too much, right? So keep the main thing the main thing. Okay, what is it that you want to do and be known for? And entrepreneurs suffer with focus because they want to do the best flower production. They want to do, best pre-rolls. Well, we got to do infused pre-rolls if we're doing pre-rolls. But everyone loves vapes and edibles. And then you're talking about 7 different business types here. Really start with a few very simple endorsements, right, that are complementary. Because every time you add in one of those product classes, you're adding on, 2,000 square feet of space that you need. So taking a phased approach and building your business and scaling it appropriately, like the whole walk before you run thing is like, it's actually really true, right? You really need to make sure that you're focused on a couple key activities that go well together and do them well. Because otherwise you're gonna do a bunch of things really, really shitty.
Can I kind of
Yeah.
ask a follow-up question to that space? I appreciate the comment on kind of starting small. I feel like what we've seen here today is a lot of Cadillacs. And I feel like there's a big chasm between what the state is expecting minimally and what they might actually be expecting, and how do we kind of find out that information? Like, what's written in rule, is that what we're following, or like this Cadillac, is that really where we need to start?
Work with a trusted consultant. I think to sort of explain those gaps would be one answer. I mean, that's a great question. I think...
That is a great question.
That is a great question. So my point there was, work with someone who's done this before. I mean, I'm biased, right? But, someone like from CannDelta could help you with that. We work with a lot of small businesses, and I think there's an amazing art at being able to launch a business with spending a little bit amount of money. Like, this should be an accessible industry, and it is if you have infinite resources to spend on it. Where the art comes in is, how do I get there without spending all of my resources? Time, money, energy, effort, and coming out of this completely gassed, because again, you still have 12 months after you crack seeds before you're gonna make $1. So what is...
Explain that? Like, a grow doesn't take a year, so what is that year?
Well, it does, because you have to, get your facility set up and running.
The state has to approve you. The fire marshal has to approve you. You got to make sure that your rooms are okay. You have to make sure you get all that documentation in, right?
So you don't mean a year after you're approved. You mean
Yeah, it can be sometimes. You should be budgeting for 12 months. Budget for the worst so you're prepared, right? Drying, trimming, curing, packaging, and selling product takes a lot more time than I think most people realize. They think as soon as they're pulling plants down in a room, that's going to be dollars in the bank. That's not the case, right? And if it is, great. And if I'm wrong, perfect. That's what we want to see, is that I'm wrong, right, when I'm trying to warn folks on things. But there's probably a time there where you might not even, and people are also accounting that they're going to sell every single gram that they produce. Like, things happen. There's crop failure. There are other catastrophes that could happen. You could send in your materials to get tested analytically, and they fail. And you can't do remediation on them, and you have to scrap, or a recall. God forbid you have a recall. Like, these are brand and reputation destroying events that you sometimes need to plan for and think about. What are the contingencies on that?
Also, I wanted to just kind of add a little bit on there. So when you're talking about Cadillac versus like small two, when you're vetting your vendors, and what I tell anybody that's even looking at Curate, like, I hope you take what we're doing and get another quote and actually compare apples to apples, because there's different models. Like, for instance, I can only speak about what we do, is that we're in the long game with you on the security, compliance, IT side. We want to be there through your whole journey. So we come in, build, and then we're out. So for instance, I'm just going to give you some real figures. A single dome camera that would be in your facility that's compliant, right? Runs anywhere from $150 to $175. Now you will see quotes that say they're $900. Well, what does that give you? Because yeah, they're both compliant, but so you have to also see that, because $900 times 50 cameras in your facility, it's pricey when you compare it to $175 times 50 cameras, right? So kind of understanding that, and this is where it gets hard, because when you start, there's gonna be so many vendors, right? And so many people like saying, hey, use this service, use this service, use this service. And you can't be the expert in everything, but you have to know the high level of what it is I'm doing and how it relates to the regulations, right? The regulations say that the cameras need to record at 90 days, and I need an 8-hour backup for that. And the minimal resolution is 720. Now, I'm not saying go 720, you don't have to, but you are compliant at 720. 720, you could see someone's facial hair and their eyes and their features. You might not see their eye colors, right? But like, you can still see all that and you're compliant. Go 1080p, maybe you'll see their eye color and whatnot, but someone sells you like an 8K camera. Is that what you want? So you gotta look at how much you're putting in at the beginning, right? And is it the right option for you too, and whatnot, So.
Yeah, my one disaster to avoid is size your HVAC-D system for weeks 8, 9. When you lower the temperature and you lower the humidity. There's so many people that have sized it for like an average, and then they get a cultivation manager in there that wants to bring the room down to 68 degrees and the humidity down to some really low number. And the equipment is equipment. It only does what it can do. And if you don't size it properly, you won't be able to do what you want to do. So tell them what you want it to do, and they'll make it work. But that week, we work with California Title 24 and ASHRAE on sizing equipment, and that's one of our biggest recommendations is have the engineer design the system for the last week of the grow when you're trying to bring temperatures and humidities down. Dehumidifiers have a number on them. That number is just at one dot on a curve. And when you make it cold in the room, you're not going to be able to get the water out of the air, and you could ruin everything.
Do you have a question, Rob?
Yeah, my question was, you guys got any resources for realtors here in Minnesota? I mean, I look at places like LoopNet, but LoopNet doesn't have everything that's on the market, and it's like, if I want to find a land spot, it's kind of harder when you don't have everything available to you.
That's a great segue. I'll be sure to pay you on your way out. We've got a webinar on location selection that's happening on July 20. It's on the handouts that we have. Sorry, 9th? 29th. Thank you. We've got a live Q&A that's going on, and in that we're going to talk about some of the resources that are available in Minnesota, who some of the folks are that are helping with real estate. It is challenging. A lot of realtors, a lot of realtors, they don't respond. They'll look at cannabis, they'll walk away. They come out of the industry just covered in scars and bruises and like bandages. So it's tough, but yeah, certainly something we'll be discussing. And yeah, we can definitely talk about that offline.
There's also something I learned recently because I've been trying to, a bunch of folks that we're working with are having trouble with locations. They're losing locations that their eyes on. So I was researching like retailers, and I'll join your webinar, realtors that I can give these clients to talk to. And so one thing I learned was that some of these realtors actually, beyond finding location, they check if the bathrooms are ADA compliant. They check if what the situation of the HVAC is. If something's wrong, who does that fall on? And I also learned there's a lot of folks that don't do that. So it's something that's overlooked. I learned recently that if the bathroom is not ADA and you take the place over and have to convert it to ADA, it could cost up to $30K.
Everyone knows what we mean when we say ADA? Great. No?
No.
So accessibility compliance for those that might be living with a disability. An ADA washroom could include a washroom in which someone with a wheelchair could come in, spin themselves around, and bars on close to toilets, that kind of thing. So that's an ADA level compliance. We've also seen rooms that are required for breastfeeding persons and their children. So there are some things that are required based on both state and local requirements for cannabis specifically.
And that kind of goes back to that one comment that a lot of folks here have made, is that work with someone that's done this before, because a realtor that's done cannabis before would be looking for that. And it's just to just cover your behind, make sure you don't get a big check.
I think was there a question on this side?
Yeah.
I saw a hand go up for a second.
Yeah, my question, I would like to kind of go back to the first question that was asked in this room, because since I've gotten to this event today, I couldn't help but notice that just about everything that you say and do is leaning toward grow rooms and grow buildings. I have a different situation, and that is the fact that I'll be taking over from my mother 78 acres of land about 100 miles west of here. So it's not a question of me going out and finding land, that land is coming to find me. Sooner or later, it's inevitable. But with all of the advice and everything else that you have handed out, for somebody like myself who will be starting on a patch of land that up until 1948 grew prodigious amounts of cannabis. Army contracts, Navy contracts, burlap bag manufacturers, that sort of thing. And then in 1948, we were told that, the family was told, I wasn't born yet then, but the family was told simply that you can no longer grow that, you must now grow sugar beets and soybeans. And the value of the crop went in half.
So sorry, sir, was there a question in there? There's a lot of great
here, and I'm
context.
building up to it, but-
Okay.
And it goes back to the first question. You've given good advice to people who are putting out grow rooms and things. What about those of us who are starting out on the land? My question is, what is the thing, in your opinion, the one thing that I should avoid growing on the land? Something that I absolutely should not do and should stay the hell away from.
Bad genetics. Genetics, no, I'm being funny and I'm being serious at the same time. There's genetics now that can withstand some of the things that happened in the past, so you want to make sure you do that.
Yeah.
I work with quite a few outdoor operators, and what's great is you get free electricity. You get the sun. You get sun-kissed, which was fantastic. But remember, when you crop, you're going to need, I'm imagining, because you have so much land, you're going to need a small army to bring in, and you're going to need somewhere to store and dry. So I think that is the those, I don't know, the sheet metal barns is what I see. Like, it just seems like no one has enough of those. So you have to put somewhere on somewhere on the land, you know it better than I do, somewhere where to bring in and process and package and do all that kind of stuff. And so I think that's one of the biggest challenges you're going to have is that aspect of it.
I would say, just from a compliance standpoint, environmental testing of any outdoor areas, water testing, if you have well water, regular water testing, make sure that that's going to pass spec. Soil testing, we talked about heavy metal contamination in soils, that's real. If you're doing sugar beets, you might not be testing for cadmium, lead, arsenic, and mercury. So those are important to do. Looking at land drainage is super important. But yeah, going back to incorporating a building space onto that land, I think is super important. Outdoor is high risk, medium reward, I would say, in terms of that, and requires a lot of people power to be able to pull those crops down as well. So sort
Drifting too. Drifting, you got to make sure that no one's drifting. I've had
pesticide
people-
drift, yeah, is another one.
He had a grow that was next to a park. In my state, the DNR is the initials that run like the outside conservatory. And same here as DNR. And he called me one day in a panic and said, "Hey, I'm failing for these like crazy chemicals, and the state's got me coming in." And it was because he didn't know that they were, the mosquito, whatever they were spraying for, got on his crop, and he lost a third of his field like that. So
What are your neighbors doing?
yeah.
Well, one of my neighbors, particularly to the south, right across the road, has a very large hog farm operation, and we do get some seepage coming across the road from the hog.
Sure. So E. coli is a really important one. You have yeast mold bacteria, so practicing, or I should say more specifically GACP, good agricultural collection practices are probably things that we need to be familiar with, regardless if you're indoor or outdoors. So it's all in the harvest. It's all in the harvest process. Lots of great stuff there that we could unpack, but
I do want to add checking your electrical grid, right? So you're going to have to add the compliance aspect to it. So the proper amount of cameras, connectivity, the 8-hour backup, right? Whether it's a generator or not. So checking how you're going to do that aspect, what's already there. If nothing's on the land right now and there's no internet, what will it take to get the internet there? So
And that is the problem. There's, as far as this section of land, it was part of a larger farm that was owned by my mom's great-grandfather many years ago. And so she has approximately 1/8 of it. There are no buildings on it.
Yeah.
So that is a disadvantage, yet it is an
Yeah.
advantage too, because
And
you can put things in there and figure out better places to put things.
Yeah.
As far as buildings and stuff.
And if anything, working in Canada at legalization has taught me, we figured out very unique ways of getting connectivity to very remote places. And what's funny is Canada, a lot of Canada is not remote, but they just have horrible connectivity. So, so we can have a conversation about that. But yeah, I hope we gave you some stuff to think about there.
You did.
Awesome. You're welcome. I want to give the folks something to take home, like to go do, to leave here, like an almost an assignment or suggestion from you guys, because we all cover different aspects. So something to kind of get them started and help. You know, if you guys want to throw some zingers out there.
Nothing comes top of mind right now. I feel like, but Lucas has got something.
Site selection. It all comes down to site selection. I think this is the most important next step for everyone, especially if they have a retail endorsement. There are so many caps on so many municipalities. It's like locking up retail now and checking for the appropriate zoning compliance and setback distances for your cultivation, I think, are what you need to be focused on when you leave this room.
Contact the electric utility and see if you can build a facility there, if they have enough supply. You have to be in an area where the level of amps that you're going to bring in is supported. Because there could be millions of dollars of upgrades needed on the grid to bring power to your site. Like, just to go along with that, make sure the power is available.
Do you have a question?
Yeah, that's just feedback off what he was saying. So when I got the call from Excel Energy, they were kind of focused on Montevideo around Mankato, and they were trying to figure out just the amount of transformer power they need to put into there just to run these facilities.
Yeah, it's funny you should mention that. That's right about halfway where I am, Clara City. So I will have those problems.
Before you leave, I would just say my thing is, thanks, Stephen, for putting this together, man. This is cool.
Honestly,
Thank you so
thank
much.
you to Canna
Really
Connect
cool. Yeah.
So, out of all the information you guys got today, I think there's one really important thing here, is that you're all getting started. You are not competitors to each other. Right now you have to lean on each other. And I'd like to encourage you guys, like when we all go hang out, everyone exchange information, just chat with each other, meet somebody new, because that's how you guys are going to succeed, is just really leaning on each other and getting the state going. So before I close this out, is there anything you want to add, Steve?
Yeah, we've got plenty of time.
Yeah.
We've got space. We got water, cookies.
Right over there, plenty of space out there in the second room. So yeah, and if anyone has any specific questions, want to get into like their actual specific facility and whatnot and ask these fine gents, feel free to.
I got one last
Yeah.
question, and that's for people that have covered multiple areas. With how they're handling everything, like, what is our outlook for success? I've heard both positive and very negative. With how the state is setting up the industry, I've heard that it's gonna tank in 5 years no matter what, and I've also heard that it has the chance to build, pretty strong. For
I mean, industries don't tank, like, no matter what, to the point of failure. I mean, my opinion is I'm very bullish on this market. I think Minnesota has done a lot of things very right. They've done this in consultation with other states. They've talked to people from New York, regulators from New York, on how to set up their regulations. I think the way that it's set up is extremely encouraging, and I think it's a very exciting position. If I thought it was a waste of time and this state would be, you know, a big tire fire in 5 years, I wouldn't be spending my afternoon, my day here. I really wouldn't be. I'm here because I believe in it. I believe in the entrepreneurs. I believe in the framework that's been set up here. I'm very excited by it. And I'm not looking for flash-in-the-pan relationships, right? I'm not just some guy who's like selling lighting, and I'm gonna sell you all the picks and shovels you guys need. Like, we're here for, I think we're all here for lifelong relationships with the folks who are setting up their businesses. Not just to, you know, get them sort of set up and running, but to make sure that they stay profitable, because you make us look good, right? You guys do well, we look great. And, you know, one day we will have a federal framework, and there'll be interstate commerce, and you folks will be a very strong player in that market.
Why did the black market, not black market, I'm thinking out loud, because that's where I'm from. But anyway, why did Oklahoma crash?
Not enough regulatory oversight. Everyone who had a pulse and their dog got 2 licenses.
Not enough regulatory
Yeah,
oversight.
that's right.
Yeah.
No setback distances, you know, just, you want a license? Sure. Can you write your name? Great, here's 2 licenses, you know, like, and I say that facetiously, but like, there was no Minnesota had one of the most difficult applications in terms of putting that together versus any other state. The barrier to entry is extremely high. You cannot just submit this is like a Sunday afternoon activity, on your way to church. Like, you really had to sit there and think about some of the things that you wanted to say in this application, and the state's going to hold you accountable to those things that you said while you operationalize. Right? So because it had a very high barrier to entry, everyone who's sitting in this room that has a license had some level of elevated seriousness when they hit submit on that, and they paid the fees. Right? So a lot of folks have been culled, right at that stage alone. And because of that, I mean, that's a signal to me that that's a healthy market. Because if you are thinking about your business before you decide you're going to set it up, and there are lots of people who wake up and they go, you know what, I'm going to start cannabis manufacturing today. And they know absolutely nothing about that whole industry. And I know this because they call our office. Right? They got $5,000 in the bank and they want to launch a 100,000 square foot cultivation facility. Right? So you can't get a loan. It's a very short conversation for us.
I did a webinar with this company called Carpfish Creative, and they were saying what one of the states did is a company actually, or not a company, a bank donated like $80 million to the government. Since the bank can't give out the loan, the government gave out the loans as kind of like loans for startup businesses. Do you see Minnesota doing something like that?
There was the grant system that they had, but there's also, they've talked about additional funding, some cities have talked about it.
So from what I've been exposed to and through our company, it's just been talks about we can come up with X amount and what we can do with it, but I haven't seen anything put into actual motion that here's how you apply, here's how you take advantage of that. It's always definitely on our radar. Everyone can use help, if it's the right scenario, but I haven't seen anything yet that it's moved that forward. Probably a good conversation is with banks, so state-run banks and credit unions, having conversations with them first. I mean, they are the banks who will allow you to open up an account to start with, and they may be aware of other small business initiatives, grants, and financing options, debt lending, financing, secured lending that might be available to entrepreneurs to get started. I would assume that there's not going to be any free money. Right? And I would assume that for every dollar that you're going to be borrowing, the bank's going to want to see some kind of collateral, so a title, right? So again, if you're that individual, unfortunately, with $5,000 in your bank account, or less, and you don't own anything, the bank's not going to give you $5 million to go start a new business, especially in cannabis. Friends and family and other investors are going to be the way. Awesome.
Cool. Give it up for the presenters.
Thank you.